Chapter 43-34. On this battlefield, the powerhouse of the Muddy Kingdom was actually able to stop Lan Meng from escaping using the hanging coffin in the door. He was definitely an existence that fit the two laws. Why did 8 colors arrange for Lan Meng to be on this battlefield? It knew that Lan Meng was heavily injured from his sneak attack on old ancestor Shan, and his strength was greatly weakened. Furthermore, they had arranged for him to be here. They were purposely sending Lan Meng to his death. No, it shouldn't be like this. Ba Color had just told him that the unknowers would not deliberately send anyone to their deaths, and now he had such a guess. Ba Color was not that stupid. Lu Yin stared at Lan Meng's corpse. Where were his wounds? Lan Meng had been heavily injured by old ancestor Shan. Even though Lu Yin couldn't clearly see where he had injured her, there were definitely scars. With old ancestor Shan's strength, it would be hard for him to recover in a few hundred years. However, Lan Meng's corpse did not have any external injuries. Lu Yin furrowed his brows and stared at it deeply. The more he looked, the more he felt that something was amiss. That wasn't Lan Meng's corpse, but an illusion. Lan Meng didn't die. But it must be on this battlefield, otherwise the eternal realm of the Mudwater Kingdom could not deceive others with blue. Lu Yin exhaled and took a step forward, appearing on a desolate meteorite in the distance. He used his mirroring technique to peer into the distance. He looked in all directions along Lan Meng's direction. He had to find the existence of the Muddy Water Kingdom that used Lan Meng's corpse illusion as bait. Lan Meng didn't die, but there must have been a battle. In that case, the existence of this muddy country definitely wasn't all that powerful. At the very least, it was not an existence that Lu Yin could not deal with. Some of the 8 elders were strong while some were weak. Of course, he had to deal with the weak ones. Even Lan Meng could escape. Not to mention him. Found it. Lu Yin stared at a spot not too far to the right of Lan Meng's corpse. There was a puddle of cement there that was easy to miss at first glance since it was the same color as the ground. However, there were traces of battle there, which was why Lu Yin had been able to find it. His celestial eye opened on his forehead, and his body instantly vanished. When he reappeared, he was right above the pile of cement and he pressed down with his Sword Dao River. The Sword Dao River's sudden attack startled the Mudwater Kingdom's powerhouse. It hadn't even noticed when Lu Yin had appeared, and it hurriedly dodged. At the same time, pieces of paper appeared and transformed into civilization weapons that shot towards Lu Yin. In the surroundings, the water droplet suddenly condensed in the void, flashing with a strange light. Everything that was visible to the naked eye was distorted, making it impossible to distinguish between space and distance. Lu Yin's lips curled up. Interesting. Was this a battle technique? Unfortunately, he was unable to confuse the heaven's eye. He had cultivated too much, and it was almost impossible for others to restrain him. On the other hand, he could easily restrain many powerful enemies. With the help of the water droplets, the cement rushed towards Lu Yin and covered him. He headed towards the cement, but the light distorted his sense of space and confused his direction, causing him to unconsciously head towards it. The cement expanded and was about to cover Lu Yin entirely. Lu Yin casually waved his hand, and the long river of Sword Dao flowed down his arm and slashed through the sky, piercing through the cement that was coming at him. Cement was aghast. How could this be? It saw Lu Yin's mocking gaze. No, this unknown being wasn't affected. He was a scoundrel, not an eternal realm being. Why would an unknown person join the rogues? It would rather fight against an eternal life realm expert. Lu Yin raised a hand and used his sword finger technique. A rainbow-colored water droplet that contained boundless vitality and matter of eternity was pierced through by the sword finger technique and scattered. In the next moment, all the scattered water droplets were connected by light and gathered at one point. This point was still unable to stop the finger sword technique and was scattered by it. This guy couldn't even compare to Mud Ghost. Just as he thought of this, the finger sword art deviated from its trajectory and missed. Lu Yin was shocked. Had he missed? You're Ni Fan, Lu Yin said. He thought of one of the 8 elders of Ni Fan, known as the Water Moon Ni Fan. Water Moon was a very beautiful name that came from the unknown's description of Ni Fan. It was good at using the environment to distort the void and refract the opponent's attacks. According to the unknown's information, Ni Fan was only compatible with one law of the universe, but at its peak, it could refract the attacks of powerhouses that were compatible with 2 laws and escape. Compared to Mud Ghost, Ni Fan wasn't good at killing, but it was better at dodging. An unknown scoundrel joined the fray. Ni Fan's voice was soft, and water droplets constantly gathered around him. The long river of Sword Dao slashed down from the void, but the water droplets completely refracted the attack and missed. Lu Yin had relied on Ni Fan's lack of understanding of him to successfully hit him once, but now Ni Fan's fear of Lu Yin was no less than Lan Meng's. He treated Lu Yin like an ordinary Eternal Realm powerhouse and wouldn't be easily hit. But no matter how highly Ni Fan thought of Lu Yin, he would at most be on the same level as Lan Meng. But Lu Yin wasn't Lan Meng. Purple Eye Force suddenly descended, oppressing all life. Water droplets around Ni Fan instantly fell, unable to withstand the pressure. Lu Yin raised his hand, and the Golian slashed horizontally. A surge of vitality crazily poured into Ni Fan's body. Ni Fan was aghast. Was this the law of the universe? This fellow wasn't an ordinary scoundrel. He wanted to retreat, but the oppressive force made it difficult for him to move. Ni Fan watched as the Golian slashed horizontally, and ripples appeared around him that instantly spread into the distance. The Golian's attack missed. Lu Yin raised a brow. He had clearly struck Ni Fan, but the attack had directly passed through it. This was a world that Ni Fan couldn't see. Ni Fan's figure constantly distorted like ripples on the surface of water. Even his voice was distorted. Who are you? You were recruited by the unknown. Even a scoundrel isn't as strong as you. Lu Yin tightened his grip on the Golian and slashed down, but he still missed. He frowned. It wasn't as simple as just distorting the void. Anyone who could reach the Eternal Realm was a genius, and they all had their own methods. This Ni Fan had specifically researched how to dodge, so he really did have some skill. At the same time, his heaven's eye constantly sensed creatures staring at him. They were the creatures from the Muddy Kingdom. Some of the creatures from the Muddy Kingdom stuck to the ground like Ni Fan. They didn't move the entire Muddy Kingdom like Mud Ghost. Mud Ghost and Ni Fan had two different personalities. One was Xianxia and was filled with the desire to attack, while the other was low-key and excelled at dodging. But no matter what, they couldn't avoid Lu Yin. Suddenly, Lu Yin paused and turned to look into the distance. Lan Meng. Far away, Lan Meng had been hiding from Ni Fan. He had been seriously injured and hadn't recovered in the past few years. If he hadn't already rejected the forced recruitment, he wouldn't have participated in this battle. Even if the 8 colors had arranged for him to fight against Ni Fan, one of the weakest of the 8 elders, he still wouldn't have been a match. After several clashes, he could only hide, and Ni Fan couldn't find him. Now he actually saw Lu Yin fighting against Ni Fan. Whether it was Lu Yin or Ni Fan, he didn't want to face either of them. After a quick glance, he prepared to leave. This kind of battle could easily affect him. But in the next moment he met Lu Yin's gaze. How did Lu Yin see him? Lan Meng was shocked, and he didn't hesitate to flee into the distance. Lu Yin sneered and teleported away. Ni Fan was stunned. He stared at the empty sky. Where did he go? His heart sank. This was an absolute expert, and he couldn't even see his movements clearly. He wasn't Lu Yin's match. He couldn't stay on this battlefield any longer. Elsewhere, Lu Yin appeared in front of Lan Meng. You can't be thinking of escaping while I teleport, right? Lu Yin smiled at Lan Meng. How many years had it been? Lan Meng had sensed Chi Su's death and accepted the mission to destroy the 3 universes to deal with them, which had attracted the Tricolor Skybearer tribe and the 7 treasures Heavenly Toad. Lan Meng himself had fought with Lu Yin more than once. Back then Lu Yin had been far from being Lan Meng's match. Now Lan Meng didn't even have the courage to face him. Lan Meng stared at Lu Yin warily. What do you want to do? This is the battlefield between the unknown and the Mudwater Kingdom. Don't think that the unknown doesn't know what you've done. Lu Yin sneered. Using the unknown to suppress me is fine. I won't do anything to you, but I can bring Ni Fan here. How long do you think you can last against Ni Fan? Lan Meng's 8 eyes stared at Lu Yin coldly. Behind his head, the blue halo was indistinct, and there was a blue hanging coffin beside him. I can escape back to Omniscient. Lu Yin nodded. Then escape. This isn't the first time you've been forced into a war. Believe it or not, even if this isn't a forced war, I still have ways to kill you. I forced Red Hero to hide under the stars. He can't even come out. Lan Meng's eyes flashed. He stared at Lu Yin while also looking around, full of vigilance. Lu Yin naturally wouldn't attack Lan Meng. If he did, he would be courting death and the 8 colors wouldn't let him off. However, it was fine as long as he didn't attack. He didn't care who won or lost in this war between the unknown and the Mudwater Kingdom. They were all enemies and it would be best if they all died. Lan Meng thought about it for a while but didn't return to Omniscient. A forced war wasn't something that could be left at will. Lu Yin didn't know the rules, but Lan Meng understood them very well. If he could leave at any time, how could he fight the war? The prerequisite for leaving was that he had to encounter a life-threatening situation. At the very least, Lu Yin had to lure an fan over to threaten his life, and his body had to be on the verge of death before he could leave. Otherwise he would be considered a traitor. Lan Meng gritted his teeth and growled, "Lu Yin, I have nothing to do with your human civilization anymore, and my mission has been cancelled. Why are you still watching me?" Lu Yin looked at Lan Meng. "Who told you to sneak attack Ancestor Shan? The 7 treasures Heavenly Toad isn't from the human civilization. Even if you want to take revenge for the toad, you shouldn't be looking for me. I didn't cause any fatal damage to Ancestor Shan. Listen to my question clearly. Who told you to sneak attack Ancestor Shan?" Lan Meng's skeletal face became even more sinister. "That has nothing to do with you." Lu Yin nodded. "Then me bringing an fan here has nothing to do with you. You just happen to be here so I can't do anything about it." "Lu Yin, don't go too far. The 7 treasures Heavenly Toad wants to pay a visit to the Blue Sky Realm." Lan Meng was furious that hateful De Mao had leaked his information. Otherwise Lu Yin wouldn't have known about the Blue Sky Realm. There was also that red hero. He was the unlucky one in their game. "Answer my question," Lu Yin barked. Lan Meng panted and hesitated for a moment. "I don't know." Lu Yin raised his brows. "You don't know?" Back in Omniscient, Lan Meng had also said that there was no powerful existence watching Ancestor Shan. He had only attacked because he saw that Ancestor Shan was an arrow at the end of its flight. However, both of them were well aware of the fact that it had appeared at that time with another Eternal Life Realm creature and launched a sneak attack at the critical moment. It was obvious that it had planned this beforehand. Now it didn't even bother to say such an excuse. Chapter 43-35. I really don't know. Actually, I didn't want to deal with Patriarch Shan. The 7 treasures Heavenly Toad is a civilization that I can use, but it doesn't count. You know how powerful the 7 treasures Heavenly Toad is, especially since that old fellow has even gone to Jixing. I don't dare to use him casually, let alone ambush him. At that time, I was still in the Blue Sky Realm when I was suddenly sent outside the 7 treasures Heavenly Toad. I saw your civilization's war with another civilization and was threatened to ambush Patriarch Shan. I can't let anyone know or I will die. Lan Meng looked at Lu Yin. Can you imagine what kind of powerhouse could make me be thrown into the 7 treasures Heavenly Toad's territory without being able to resist? In order to not die, I can only do my best to hide the fact that I was forced to attack Patriarch Shan. Lu Yin narrowed his eyes. If Patriarch Shan had not said that he was being targeted by some existence and could not even escape using teleportation, Lu Yin would not have suspected Lan Meng. Haha, the old fellow said that he knows who is targeting Patriarch Shan. Lan Meng said in a low voice, then you should ask him. Perhaps he was the one who threw me into the 7 treasures Heavenly Toad's territory. Anyway, I don't know. If you don't believe me, you can use karma to investigate. It doesn't count as you attacking. Lu Yin did not hold back and used the karma spiral. Lan Meng did not dodge. He allowed Lu Yin to investigate. Every living being had secrets. Lan Meng was willing to let Lu Yin use karma to investigate without restraint. Either his secret had already been exposed to Lu Yin and there was no need to hide it, or the secret he was hiding was not within Lu Yin's knowledge. Unless Lu Yin could see through Lan Meng's entire life, he would not be able to discover this secret. How long had Lan Meng lived? It was impossible to use karma to see through his entire life. Lan Meng was also helpless. As long as it was possible, he would not allow Lu Yin to use karma to investigate. However, he had to clarify this matter. Otherwise he would not have an easy time being targeted. The 7 treasures Heavenly Toad tribe still had experts alive. Lu Yin could not deal with him, but as long as he threw the 7 treasures Heavenly Toad into the Blue Sky Realm, he would be finished. He believed that the 7 treasures Heavenly Toad would be happy to kill him. Therefore this matter had to be clarified. It did not want to be the scapegoat for others. Lu Yin watched the scenes of Lan Meng's karmic past, and he had indeed seen Lan Meng's initial panic. Even Lan Meng himself did not know how he had appeared outside the Rainbow Tribe's territory. That existence was rather terrifying, and not only had it caused Patriarch Shan to feel apprehensive, but it also knew of Lan Meng's existence. Was he really that old man? Who's that old guy? Lu Yin asked. Lan Meng said helplessly, do you think I know what it is? Although I've been with the unknown for a long time, I can't compare to those few. I've only heard my father's guess. Perhaps it is a strange life form that can peer into the long river of time. Your father? My father is also unknown. It was because my father was an unknown that I was able to join the unknown. This can be passed down? Lan Meng said, "It's not an inheritance. It's just that I'm strong enough and I just happen to lack people." "Then is your father still alive?" "He died long ago." "What about Che? What is it? Tell me what you know about the unknowable beings." Lan Meng stared at Lu Yin. "I won't say anything else. I've broken the rules. Even if you don't kill me, they can easily kill me." Lu Yin's eyes flashed. "Why are you so obsessed with dealing with our human civilization?" Lan Meng hesitated. Lu Yin said, "As long as I'm alive, you'll never be able to deal with the human civilization again." "Why hide? Do you think that the current human civilization will decline one day? Even if it does, it will only happen after your blue sky realm is destroyed. I'll tell you clearly that before the human civilization is destroyed, I will first go to the blue sky realm to deal with you." Lan Meng's tone was cold. "There's no need to threaten me. If you want to know, then I'll tell you. It's not a secret anyway, and those unknown old fellows should already know. I want to deal with your human civilization for the sake of the stabilized turbid treasure." Lu Yin was stunned. "Stabilized turbid treasure?" "That's right. The human civilization was at the peak of its glory during the Nine Walls era. Even if it was unknown, the various civilizations had to unite to destroy it. During that era, the humans themselves were very powerful, but what was even more powerful was that each wall had its own unique stabilized turbid treasure. Those were the strongest of the turbid treasures, and I want to obtain one." Lu Yin's eyes flashed as he stared at Lan Meng without speaking. "I've been staying in the Ninth Wall's universe all this time because I want to find the Ninth Wall's stabilized turbid treasure. We all know that everyone wants a stabilized turbid treasure. As long as I can obtain one, even if I'm only compatible with one law of the universe, I'll be able to fight against existences that are compatible with two. Are you satisfied with this answer?" Lan Meng continued. Lu Yin asked, "How much do you know about the stabilized turbid treasure of my Nine-Wall civilization, and why are you so sure that it's in the three universes? If it really is in the three universes, why haven't De Mao and the others taken action yet? Do you think it's your turn?" Lan Meng sneered. "That would require them to know that the stabilized turbid treasure is in your human civilization. My father told me about this, so I might as well tell you." After a pause, he changed the topic. "I'm sincere enough in telling you this. From now on, you and I will have nothing to do with each other. If you're willing, I'll tell you. If not, I won't say anything else. At most, I'll just give up on the blue sky realm." Lu Yin agreed. Lan Meng and the human civilization had not reached the point where they would fight to the death. Even though the human civilization had faced many crises because of him, some crises would still erupt in the future even without him. It was just a matter of time. As for the seven treasures Heavenly Toad, he had nothing to do with Lan Meng. The seven treasures Heavenly Toad looking for Lan Meng had nothing to do with him. Furthermore, it would not be easy to find trouble with him now. Lu Yin did not know the exact coordinates of the blue sky realm, and Lan Meng would definitely not stay in the blue sky realm. Lan Meng heaved a sigh of relief. Lu Yin was very strong, but he did not know. He was not much of a threat under the rules, but there were too many powerhouses in the human civilization behind this person. Even Red Hero had been suppressed, let alone Lan Meng. The seven treasures Heavenly Toad could kill him. He had not recovered from the heavy injuries caused by Patriarch Shan. If he provoked this fellow again, he would easily die. He needed time to recover. Teleportation was the nemesis of time. As long as Lu Yin did not appear, Lan Meng would have time to catch his breath. "My father participated in the battle that destroyed the Ninth Fort civilization," Lan Meng said in a low voice. Lu Yin was not surprised. According to his calculations, it was about time. "After that battle, my father saw the second wall's chaos red umbrella enter a river of time with his own eyes. That river of time belongs to your three universes. Universes can move, and I calculated that it matches your three universes perfectly. Thus, I guess that the red umbrella is in your three universes," Lan Meng said. Lu Yin thought of the woman in red who had entered the Mirage domain. If she was xuanhuan, then it would make sense for her to bring the red umbrella into the Mirage domain. Now, it seemed that the woman in red was the second wall's master, xuanhuan. She was in the Mirage domain, including the Chaos Red umbrella. Before my father died, he told me the news and told me to find a way to go to the human civilization to find the Chaos Red treasure after I broke through to immortality. Lan Meng recalled. "After I broke through to the eternal realm, I wanted to go to the human civilization to find it, but my strength was not enough to suppress the human civilization at that time. I had no choice but to join the unknowns, learn divine power, and obtain the hanging coffin and portal. However, the unknowns have their own rules. Chishu dealt with the human civilization and I could only wait, day after day." Lan Meng's gaze was cold. It was a waste to let Chishu deal with the human civilization. She did not know that the human civilization had the Chaos Red treasure. I kept contacting her but she never appeared. Gradually I became suspicious but I could not clearly feel Chishu's power so I could only wait. Lu Yin could not help but admire Azure Lotus Emperor's methods. He had used Chishu's power to protect the human civilization for so long. Otherwise, Lan Meng would have acted long ago and lured the 7 treasures Heavenly Toad and the tricolor sky-carrying race to him. Of course, he now knew that Azure Lotus Emperor was hiding his strength. In addition, he was Red Hero's 120% of the path of ruthlessness, so the 3 universes would not be affected. However, with Red Hero's attitude towards the 3 universes, it was fine as long as Azure Lotus Emperor did not die. He did not care about the survival of the others in the 3 universes. I've been waiting for the confirmation of Chishu's death, but I didn't expect you to show up as well. Lan Meng's gaze turned from cold to helpless, and his tone was full of helplessness. The other unknowns did not know that Red Umbrella had joined the 3 universes. Otherwise, it would not have been my turn to attack the human civilization. As for the 9th stronghold, it has long been Chia's mission. As long as the human cultivators who have escaped from the 9th stronghold are not dealt with, this mission will not be completed. Actually, everyone knows that Chia is looking for the Chaos Red treasure, but he hasn't been able to find it after so many years. If the other unknowns were to look for it, they might have found it long ago. However, no one can break the rules of the unknowns. Lan Meng looked at Lu Yin. The unknowns are fair. As long as the mission is in your hands, no one can take it away from you. Anyone who breaks the rules will not have a good ending. You don't have to remind me. Since you've told me all this, I've already agreed to have nothing to do with you. That's good. How much do you know about the 9th stronghold civilization? Lan Meng said helplessly. Father died too suddenly, so he did not have time to tell me. But it doesn't matter since the 9th stronghold civilization has already been destroyed. What Father cares about is the Chaos Red treasure. He told me to find it no matter what. As long as I can obtain one, it will be enough to protect me. The Chaos Red Umbrella, the Chaos Red Umbrella, the Celestial Eye, the Milky Way, the 7 Needles of Hell, the Searing Heart Candle, and the Cauldron. If you obtain one, you can protect yourself. If you obtain 2, you might be able to achieve glory. Lu Yin recalled the 9 Chaos Red treasures that Lan Meng had mentioned. The Celestial Eye? It should be in the Longevity civilization. The Red Umbrella had accompanied Hong Shuang into the Mirage domain, and the Cauldron was in Master's hands. As for the Searing Heart Candle? Patriarch Shan had once said that he had seen the human civilization on a huge candle. Could that be the Searing Heart Candle? If he could gather all 9 Chaos Red treasures, the human civilization might be able to regain its glory. But where were the other Chaos Red treasures? Have you obtained any of the 9 Chaos Red treasures? I don't know. No one completely understands the unknowns. Lu Yin asked Lan Meng many more questions. Lan Meng knew some of them but he did not know most of them. As for the various unknowns, even if Lan Meng knew, he would not reveal them. Chapter 43-36. Lan Meng only told Lu Yin that there were 12 colors, corresponding to red, silver, and orange. Transparent, yellow, black, green, white, blue, cyan, purple, and 8 other colors. Among the 12 colors, Lu Yin knew that Chi Su, who represented red, and Hua, who represented silver, were dead. Orange was Red Hero, green was Yu Che, blue was Lan Meng, cyan was Demao, and purple was He. However, he did not know the true identities and species of He and Yu Che. Transparent, yellow, black, white, and 8 other colors, he did not know what they were. Yellow had a conversation, and its words were dissatisfied with human civilization. 8 colors were unknown and transparent. There was no trace of black or white at all. Lu Yin wanted to know more about the 12 colors. However, Lan Meng did not understand. If he faced a monster like He that had lived for a long time, he might be able to find out. As he thought about it, a small door appeared beside Lan Meng. Lan Meng said, "There are other unknowns contacting me." Lu Yin looked at the door. This was how the unknowns contacted each other on the battlefield. He did not have it because he had not completely joined the unknowns and did not worship the divine tree. Thus, only the 8 colors could contact him. Lan Meng looked at the door and connected with his divine power. A familiar voice came from the door. It was Demao. Lan Meng, is there any way to contact the human Lu Yin? Lan Meng looked at Lu Yin. Lu Yin smiled and nodded. Yes, Lan Meng replied. Demao raised its voice. I want to talk to him. Why are you looking for him? Lan Meng looked at Lu Yin and asked when Lu Yin did not respond. Of course I have something to do with him. Help me contact him. Demao was impatient. Lan Meng frowned. Why should I help you? Because I can protect you. Otherwise, with your half-dead body, you will not be able to return alive, Demao said sternly. Lan Meng sneered. At most, I will hide. It was afraid of Lu Yin because Lu Yin did things unconventionally and walked on the edge of the unknown's rules. His teleportation was especially disgusting. It could not avoid it even if it wanted to. It was possible to kill it without breaking the rules. However, Demao was different. They were on different battlefields and it was an eternal realm. It had no advantage in the war with the Mudwater Kingdom and could not find trouble with it. Since Lu Yin could appear here, it meant that he had dealt with his opponent. Compared to Demao, Lu Yin was much more of a threat, and this had nothing to do with his own strength. Unknowns were fair. No matter how strong or weak they were not allowed to attack each other internally. Demao said in a low voice, "Help me contact him. It'll be good for you. We can give him the conditions to protect you first, at least to ensure that you can survive this war." Lu Yin looked at Lan Meng. "Ask him who is keeping an eye on Patriarch Shan." Lan Meng hesitated. Lu Yin frowned and stared at Lan Meng. Lan Meng did not want to get involved in this matter, as it still had a lingering fear from what had happened back then. That existence that it had been unable to resist was too terrifying, and if it really helped Lu Yin find out, then it was afraid that it would be in trouble. However, Xianxia probably didn't know. "Sure, you can contact Lu Yin, but tell me who was watching Patriarch Shan back then. Who forced me to ambush Patriarch Shan?" Lan Meng asked helplessly. The other party was silent for a moment, then said, "Are you asking me? What else? How would I know? Didn't you say you knew in Jixing?" Lan Meng asked. Demao sneered. "I was just playing with that little thing. You believe me? I don't know, but that old purple guy definitely knows. He will also contact you to find Lu Yin. You can ask him yourself." "Then you have no value," Lan Meng said. Demao growled, "Lan Meng, don't be ungrateful." Lan Meng said in a low voice, "You revealed the blue sky realm. I haven't settled this with you yet, and you still want me to help you? It's just a name, not the coordinates. Believe it or not, if you don't help me, then when this war ends and you die, it's fine. If you don't die, then I'll give the coordinates to Lu Yin. Let's see if those human powerhouses and those damn toads behind him won't make trouble for you," Demao threatened. Lan Meng was furious. "You." It did not dare to speak as it was afraid that Demao would reveal the coordinates right now. Even though it had already said that it had nothing to do with Lu Yin, this kind of matter depended on the other party's sincerity. Once the coordinates were revealed, the initiative would be completely handed over to Lu Yin. This was not something it was willing to do. Lu Yin knew that Lan Meng would not speak again, so he said, "Demao, you were looking for me? Lu Yin? You're right next to Lan Meng. Are you testing me?" Demao's tone was deep. Lu Yin smiled. "You want to chat with me? I have plenty of time. Take your time." Demao's tone changed. "Do you still remember what you said in Jizong before the war?" Lu Yin said, "This muddy kingdom is indeed troublesome. Once you feel that you will undoubtedly die and can't escape, you will specify karma. This is too disadvantageous for you eternal realm cultivators." "I understand. Tell me, what will it take for you to help us?" Demao said bluntly. Lu Yin did not understand. "The threat to you is karma. At worst, you can just not participate in the war. Why must you eliminate your opponent? Then why join the unknowns?" Demao asked. Lu Yin raised his eyebrows. Before he could answer, another door appeared beside Lan Meng. Lan Meng glanced at Lu Yin and connected with his divine power. "Little Lan Meng, can you contact that little guy Lu Yin?" This was the old man. Lu Yin's lips curled up. "I'm right here. Old man, if you want me to help you, sure. Tell me who is watching Ancestor Shan." Demao did not speak at this moment, as if he also wanted to know. The old man laughed. I don't know." Lu Yin raised his eyebrows. "Didn't you say you knew?" "Haha, we were chatting happily. I was just following the conversation. Little guy, did you take it seriously?" The old man's voice was very relaxed. Lu Yin sneered. "Fine, then do as you wish. I won't help you in this battle." "That's not up to you," the old man said. Lu Yin was amused. "What, are you going to force me? It's temptation, not coercion. Little guy, I have no enmity towards you." "What temptation? Tell me who is watching Ancestor Shan." "Don't take it seriously. Demao came to find you, right? What did he ask you to help him?" Lu Yin glanced at the other door. Demao still did not speak. "You will tell me your identity in exchange." "Haha, he won't. He already agreed." Haha, he won't. What? He doesn't know. Lu Yin frowned. Demao doesn't know your identity? Haha, his guess is not right. Little guy, why do you want to know my identity? I'm curious. You want to know about every unknown to use in the future battle with the unknown? That's not wise. Even your human civilization did not destroy the unknown during the 9 Strongholds era. Although the number of unknown is small, the water is deep. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. How deep? Haha, I can't see the bottom. Who is the deepest? I don't know. Lu Yin did not speak and looked at the 2 doors. Little guy, war is the fastest way to build friendship. There is no communication in the distance, but the unknown can. Do you want our friendship? Lu Yin said seriously, the foundation of friendship is to understand each other and be honest with each other. There will be such a day. You won't get anything from talking so much. Lu Yin, it's unrealistic for you to explore the unknown. We can't even do that. Let's solve the problem in front of us first. Demao was impatient. Old man, tell me what you want. The old man was not surprised that Demao was listening to their conversation. Little guy, what do you want? Be realistic. I want to help the human civilization add 10 immortal realms. Lu Yin, do you know what you're saying? Lu Yin said, is it too much? You 2 can get 5 each. Do you think the immortal realms can be increased as you wish? The mud dolls and the mud kingdom can be increased, but they will weaken when the time is up. This method is already quite impressive. Other civilizations have to rely on themselves if they want to increase the immortal realms. The Red Coat civilization under the Red Hero's ruthless path took the path of the ruthless path to reduce suffering. It will increase the probability of success, but how many can it increase? And if it is not for the ruthless path's inheritance to make up for the combat power, the Red Coat immortal realms they increase will not be comparable to their own cultivation. Those who rely on the universe reboot to break through to immortality are more powerful than those who use the ruthless path. The power of the Red Coat immortal realms comes from their inheritance of the ruthless path. If the Red Coat immortal realms are like this, how do you expect us to help the human civilization? Haha, little guy, if the immortal realms can appear at will, the distance would have been messed up. Be realistic, especially when you're touching the upper limit. You will be unlucky. What upper limit? Haha, you will know in the future. Lu Yin was dissatisfied. Stop pretending. You old guys have benefited from joining the unknown, and the unknown war is the price you have to pay. Now that you've gotten the benefits, you want me to help you pay the price? Is this the reality? Killing the 8 elders is a 4 stars mission reward. We will figure out the opponent's strength, severely injure them, and then hand them to you. The reward will also be yours. This is a benefit for you. Lu Yin, do you know what a 4 stars reward means? Demao said. The old guy continued, the distance of the square inch and the existence of the human civilization. Lu Yin's body trembled. Ba Color had said that the human civilization did exist. He thought it was referring to the Red Coat immortal realms, but the old guy was obviously not referring to the Red Coat immortal realms. The human civilization is very special. The unknown participated in the battle to destroy 9th base and is the mortal enemy of the human civilization. Therefore, anything related to the human civilization has a high value to the unknown. Little guy, you should have killed the 8 elders, but that's not enough. If you want to find other human civilizations, especially those that can help you, you will need at least a 5 stars mission reward. This has nothing to do with the combat power of the human civilization, but the degree of threat the unknown poses to the human civilization. For the unknown, the more human civilizations unite, the greater the danger. A 5 stars mission reward will be given to you if you help us kill our opponent. You will know where the other human civilizations are, and you will have a clearer understanding of the 9th base. This is the biggest benefit for you. Chapter 43-37. Lu Yin admitted that he was tempted. This old guy had been certain that he would help from the start. I really want to help you. Even if there are no other conditions, just the battlefield mission reward is enough for me to help. However, the reward is enough to buy my life, but it's not enough. Who wants your life? Demao was irritable. Lu Yin calmly said, your opponents are definitely top powerhouses. The 8 colors won't send you to your deaths, even if you severely injure them. Even if you figure out their strength, it will still be dangerous for me to take over. At least under the premise of karma, you can't really beat them half to death, and I'll have to face at least half of your strength. You're so strong. I don't have the confidence to deal with half of you. Fighting is suicide. You have teleportation, karma, and various other methods. We'll help you formulate a battle strategy, Demao said. Lu Yin shook his head. It's still too risky. I can slowly find the human civilization, and I'm confident that I can deal with Lan Meng's opponents. Killing 2 of the 8 elders will give me 2 4-stars mission rewards. I'm satisfied. What do you want? Demao shouted. The old guy slowly said, I'll give you 1 chance to touch the Lord's River of Time. The air suddenly froze. Lu Yin looked at the door. He thought that he had heard wrong. Lan Meng also stared at the door. I'll give you 1 chance. A chance to touch the Lord's River of Time. This was the old guy's condition. The Lord's River of Time. It was a conceptual existence. However, everyone knew that it did exist, but it was difficult to touch. Time flowed in every universe, and if there was time, there would be the River of Time. The River of Time in all universes was just a tributary of the Lord's River of Time. No matter what level one could use the power of time, it was limited to their own universe. The Blood Tower Lord was like this, and so was Lu Yin himself. They couldn't touch the Lord's River of Time. Even the River of Time was a legend to them. But now the old guy could actually let him touch the Lord's River of Time? Little guy, are you satisfied with this condition? The old guy asked calmly, his tone never changing. He knew from the start that no one could refuse this condition. Regardless of whether Lu Yin's touch of the River of Time was helpful or not, he couldn't refuse this temptation. No one could refuse. Lu Yin really didn't know what was the point of him touching the River of Time. Perhaps it could bring about a transformation in the power of time? Perhaps he could see the past like the first time he touched the River of Time? Or perhaps it could make flowing light transform again. He didn't know. Perhaps it was just a touch, a glance, or a flash. But even if it was just a flash, he couldn't reject it. All right. No one was surprised that Lu Yin had agreed. He would definitely agree. Wait for my notice. After this battle, I'll bring you to see what it means to be the master of the River of Time. After speaking, the door disappeared. Lu Yin's eyes twinkled with excitement. The unknown door opened above the main River of Time so it could ignore the distance of space. After passing through the door, one would be in an endless distance. This meant that there were unknown existences who could freely enter the main River of Time. How terrifying was this? From the looks of it now, it might just be that old man. Lu Yin looked at the other door. How is it, Demao? This old fellow is very sincere, isn't he? What about you? Demao fell silent. This old fellow's conditions had exceeded the limits of what it could offer. It didn't know how to convince Lu Yin to help, especially since they were enemies. Only then did Lan Meng regain his composure. There was an extremely terrifying expert hidden within the unknown. He knew that before his father had died, he had told Lan Meng about the stabilized treasure and also reminded him that he had to join the unknown. Only by joining the unknown would he be able to gain a foothold in the universe. After so many years, Lan Meng had always wanted to see through the unknown and make some guesses. But just as Demao had said, even they couldn't see through the unknown, let alone Lan Meng. How about this? I'll help you raise a condition. Lu Yin looked at the door. Give me that mother forest of yours. Demao was stunned. Mother forest? Lu Yin grunted. The one I saw before. It's the mother forest. The mother trees have been uprooted. Even if I give them to you, they won't be able to survive. I'm just keeping them fresh. They won't be able to support another universe. Lu Yin said, I know. That's why I want these mother trees to return to dust. That's all? What do you think? No one could see him absorbing the green motes of light from the mother trees, and Demao was no exception. Their understanding of the mother trees was still limited, and they couldn't guess what Lu Yin was trying to do. However, Lu Yin was right. He really did want the mother trees to return to dust. Since the mother trees couldn't survive, he would let them be free. All right, I'll give them to you after this battle. Wait for my notice. All right. Demao's door disappeared, and they all went to fight their opponents. They wanted to see their opponents clearly, injure them severely, and then hand them over to Lu Yin. This was what they needed to do, and all Lu Yin needed to do was wait. But before that, he had to find an eye fan. He was still confident in dealing with an eye fan. Lu Yin used mirroring to look into the distance. Where's an eye fan? He continued to search, but an eye fan couldn't have run far with its speed. However, he still couldn't find it even after several days. Lan Meng was waiting by his side. He was Lu Yin's channel of communication with the old man. He still couldn't find it. An eye fan had disappeared, and he had probably hidden himself. Lu Yin frowned. This an eye fan was truly cautious. If he couldn't win, he would run. This was equivalent to giving up on the battlefield, just like Lan Meng. Lan Meng really wanted to leave, but he knew that he couldn't. Where can this an eye fan hide? Do you know? Lu Yin asked. At this moment, he was bringing Lan Meng everywhere to search for an eye fan. Once he dealt with the 8 elders, he would receive another reward. Lan Meng was helpless. I don't know. I've been hiding from him ever since I arrived, and he's always been the one looking for me. Lu Yin looked into the distance. The unknown envoy of balance. Do you know which one it is? Lan Meng went on guard. I won't say anything about the unknown envoy. We agreed on that. I'm just asking. If you can tell me, then tell me. If you can't, then forget it. With that, a karmic spiral appeared at Lu Yin's fingertip, and he threw it at Lan Meng. Lan Meng couldn't dodge and was pierced by the karmic spiral. He stared at Lu Yin angrily. Lu Yin looked at the karmic history of Lan Meng's attack. He had purposely mentioned the unknown envoy of balance to remind Lan Meng of this so that he could use karma to investigate. Transparent. Lu Yin, if you attack me again, I'll definitely tell 8 colors that you've broken the rules. Lan Meng was on guard. Lu Yin was confused. Weren't you the one who told me to use karma to investigate? I won't argue with you. In any case, if you use karma to attack me again, then don't blame me for being hostile. Lan Meng was afraid that Lu Yin would cause trouble for him, but he was also wary of the envoy of balance and the other unknowns. Lu Yin did not continue investigating. Transparent meant that he was the envoy of balance. His gaze darkened. Several months had passed, but the old man and Big Harry had not contacted him. Their battles must not have been easy. 8 colors must have arranged for them to have opponents of similar strength. They had to fight, think of ways to reduce their karmic restraints, and figure out their opponent's abilities. None of this was easy. On this day, a door appeared and Lan Meng used his godly power to connect to it. Clear's voice traveled out. Lu Yin, I'm looking for you. Lu Yin's head hurt as he was most afraid of communicating with Clear. This guy was too polite and he could not do anything to him. He had also participated in the Ninth Wall Civilization War and was an enemy, not a friend. However, he had also helped Lu Yin given Mie Wuhuang's power, and saved the Tianyuan universe. Lu Yin could not understand what Clear was thinking. This guy should be an enemy of the human civilization, but he had been so polite when he had first entered the 3 universes. Lu Yin did not want to answer. Lan Meng looked at the door but did not say anything. Clear's voice traveled out again. Lu Yin, Violet said that you were with Lan Meng. Are you all right? Lu Yin was speechless. Was this concern? What is it? It's great that you're fine. Violet and Cyan are asking you to help them deal with their opponents. It's best if you don't go. The more powerhouses you kill from Mudwater Nation, the easier it will be for Nibiru to target you. Nibiru is very powerful and it will be difficult for you to escape from him. You don't need me to help you deal with your opponents? Lu Yin asked. There's no need. Actually, in a war with Mudwater Nation, having no losses is a victory. It's good that you're with Lan Meng, but it's too dangerous for you to interfere in other battles. Since you're with Lan Meng, it means that you've already dealt with your opponents. You killed one of the 8 elders and your name has already been linked to Nibiru. Lu Yin did not understand. Why are you telling me this? Clear replied, we're both unknowns, so it's only right. You participated in the war that destroyed the Ninth Wall Civilization? Yes. Then why are you still willing to help me? You're an unknowns, not a Ninth Wall Civilization. I'm willing to help any unknowns, including Lan Meng. Don't get involved again. Aren't you afraid that the 8th color will find trouble with you? You're going against it, Lu Yin retorted. Clear smiled and said, it's not that exaggerated. It's just a war. It's fine as long as we don't lose. Is that what those old fogies are thinking as well? Lu Yin, in a war between civilizations, we can't afford to lose any of them. If we lose, we'll be half a step into the abyss of death. You'll understand this when you truly understand the concept. So no matter how difficult it is to deal with Mudwater Nation, Violet and the others will not let the unknowns lose. It's absolutely impossible. Lu Yin said in a low voice, was that what you thought during the war between the unknowns and the Ninth Wall Civilization? You could say that. Got it? Clear's voice rang out again. After this war, I have something for you. It's a relic from the 5th stronghold. I participated in the war at the 5th stronghold. Lu Yin was shocked. The 5th stronghold? Yes, so you have to be careful in this war. Violet and the others will be fine. They're only looking for you to reduce their losses. But your life is your own and you only have one. Remember, don't encounter Nibiru. He killed Xianling before. Lu Yin's expression changed. Killing Xianling before meant that teleportation would not allow him to escape Nibiru's killing intent. Chapter 43-38. It was not impossible for a fishing civilization to have a way to deal with teleportation. As the strongest person in Muddy Nation, it was not surprising that Ni Biluo had killed Xian Ling. It was just a guess. It was another thing to know. I got it. Thank you. No matter what Che had done in the past, at least it was reminding him now. Moreover, Lu Yin had to accept this favor since it was willing to return the Fifth Stronghold's relics. War was merciless and there was no right or wrong. It was just a war between civilizations. But it was different outside of war. It did not have to return the Fifth Stronghold's relics. The portal disappeared. Lu Yin pondered. What was Che thinking? Was it helping every unknowable? In the worst-case scenario, could returning the Fifth Stronghold's relics be some kind of scheme? After all, it was an enemy, so Lu Yin had to think so. But no matter what, since Che had returned it, he would definitely take it. He would continue to wait for Demao and Old Man Hehe. He waited for 3 years. During these 3 years, Lu Yin had been with Lan Meng. He stayed on this battlefield and 8 colors did not come looking for him. And an Ai fan was nowhere to be seen. It must have left this battlefield. This battlefield was the same as his previous one, and it was considered resolved. And 8 colors did not come looking for him either. It seemed that the other battlefields of the unknowns did not need reinforcements. No matter what, Muddy Nation was a fishing civilization. Now it seemed like they were being suppressed by the unknowns. How much did Muddy Nation know about the unknowns? Should not be much. Otherwise this battle might not have happened. Of course. He might have underestimated Muddy Nation. Although Ni Gui and Ni Fan were weak, it did not mean that the other 8 elders were weak. The unknowns also had existences like Lan Meng and Ni Fan, who were in line with the laws of the universe. On this day the portal appeared. Lan Meng used his divine power to connect to it, and Demao's voice came out. Lu Yin, get ready to come over. Lu Yin's eyes were solemn. Information. Ni Bai used a civilization's treasure to collect the eternal realm and attached it to his body to form a powerful armor with supreme strength. This opponent is suitable for you. Strength? Lu Yin's eyes flashed. Indeed, it was suitable for him. Ni Bai's strength is considered average among the 8 elders. I've been testing it and now I can see that it's in line with the laws of the universe. Movement can affect its surroundings. With power. To it, this is power. Stillness can also produce power because the universe is moving. The reason why it can be still is because it is using its power to offset the universe and make it move. This power of motion and stillness can form overlaps. It can overlap up to 100 times and its power is considerable. The invisible world brought about by the laws of the universe can lock all power for its own use. Whether it's the power it unleashes or the power of the enemy, they will all be used in its world to increase its power. This is the information on Ni Bai's battle strength. I have already severely injured it, but I also pretended to be heavily injured to avoid it. Otherwise it might have directly targeted me. I will leave the rest to you. This invisible world was similar to the primogenitor's Azure Sky Palace, but the Azure Sky Palace could only use one's own power, which was equivalent to not consuming one's own body. This world, on the other hand, could use all of one's enemy's power. He took a deep breath. How is Ni Bai's strength compared to Xie's? Ni Bai is better at killing, but if we break its power it will be useless, Demao said. Lu Yin understood. Demao, you're not planning on using Ni Bai to deal with me, are you? In the entire Mudwater Kingdom, aside from Ni Bailuo, no one can break through teleportation. I also believe that you have other methods. I know how sinister humans can be, Demao said in a low voice. Lu Yin didn't deny it. I'm just warning you. If you dare do that, I will make you pay a price worse than Red Hero. Kid, you think too highly of yourself, but I really don't plan on doing anything to you on this battlefield. Don't worry and go. Demao was disdainful, but he didn't argue with Lu Yin. The door beside Lan Meng expanded and Lu Yin walked towards it. Let's go together. Lan Meng was unwilling. I want to stay on this battlefield. If you don't go, how will the old guy contact me? Demao, tell the old guy that Lan Meng won't cooperate, Lu Yin shouted. Demao was impatient. Lan Meng, follow him. Otherwise, even if you walk out of this battlefield alive, you won't have an easy time. Lan Meng was sullen. If he had been at his peak, he wouldn't have been afraid of Demao. Demao couldn't personally take action, so he could just give up on the Blue Sky Realm. Now, however, he could only follow. Lu Yin and Lan Meng passed through the door and arrived at a new universe. Lu Yin looked back at the door. This door was open in the River of Time, and it could be used for both movement and communication. It was truly convenient. Time and space were like the 2 most extreme points of a square inch. If one grasped one could ignore the other. As long as one could freely walk through the River of Time, spatial distance was not an issue. This was also one of the reasons why the unknowers didn't have circles. Their circles belonged to the entire square inch. The door shrank and Damao's voice rang out. It's healing near you. I don't know exactly where it is. Just look for the Mudwater Kingdom. It's very arrogant. Lu Yin nodded and used mirroring to look into the distance. Soon he found the Mudwater Kingdom. Just to be cautious, he stared at the Mudwater Kingdom and then scanned his surroundings. He didn't feel his heart palpitate. At his level of strength, he trusted his senses more and more. If he felt his heart palpitate with a single glance, then he would definitely leave without hesitation. Even so, he still decided to test the waters. Thus, he placed a hand on Lan Meng's body. Lan Meng's skeletal face changed, and before he could react, he was grabbed by an irresistible force. Lu Yin teleported and then tossed towards the Mudwater Kingdom. In the distance, Damao saw this and wasn't surprised. Lan Meng's strength had been damaged, and Lu Yin had used too much strength. He wanted to struggle free, but his body continued to crash into the Mudwater Kingdom. Various creatures appeared in the Mudwater Kingdom, and all sorts of civilizations' treasures shot towards Lan Meng. Lan Meng crashed into one of the civilization's treasures, and with some of the counterforce and his own remaining strength, he fled in another direction without hesitation. That bastard Lu Yin. Oh, you want to leave? A low voice came from the Mudwater Kingdom that shook the void. Immediately after, a chain was flung out like a snake towards Lan Meng. Lan Meng looked back, but the chain was faster than him. He shouted, Lu Yin, why aren't you attacking? Lu Yin watched calmly, not in a hurry. The chain was flung out, wrapping around Lan Meng. Lan Meng clenched his teeth. "And I buy your opponent is not me." With that, he raised his hand and a blue sword appeared. He slashed at the chain. With a bang, the chain was restrained for an instant, and Lan Meng increased his speed and fled into the distance. The chain danced in the air again, crossing the heavens as if it had bound the entire universe. Blue unknowable, let's see where you can run. Lan Meng was furious. "And I buy, your opponent is the other one, not me. Stay." And I buy didn't listen at all. Above the chain, vitality bloomed, and it constantly spun, forming a battle technique that forcefully suppressed Lan Meng. Lan Meng was helpless. His blue sword continuously slashed at the chain, and then he let go of it. Sword shadows shot out from the void, forming swords. The sword shadows slashed at all directions of the chain. Lan Meng raised a claw and grabbed the chain, pulling it taut and allowing the sword shadows to slash at him. With a loud bang, the sword shadows fused together and cut off a section of the chain. Lan Meng took the opportunity to flee again. At this time, another chain flew out, followed by another in another direction, one after another. The white chain was a weapon of civilization, which was the best way to deal with the eternal life realm. Lan Meng hurriedly controlled the sword. If he slashed at these chains, he would be able to kill the civilization that had turned into a chain artifact. The karmic binding would then fall upon him and he could only dodge. At the same time he shouted for Lu Yin and Damao to attack. Within the Mudwater Kingdom, an Bai was on guard. Lan Meng's appearance was too strange. No matter how he looked at it, he had been thrown over. It was that blue unknowable. Using this blue unknowable to test him? It was Lu Yin. He attacked Lan Meng while remaining vigilant of his surroundings. How many had come? The heavens suddenly turned blue. A blue halo fell from above, covering the Mudwater Kingdom. No creature could escape and they were all bound by the blue halo. Lan Meng took advantage of this opportunity to escape. He had been forced to use the invisible world. Chains of civilization artifacts fell one after another. An Bai stared in the direction that Lan Meng had fled. He shattered the blue halo and pulled back the white chain. Suddenly danger appeared. Lu Yin walked out with Golian in his hand. The river of sword Dao poured down as Golian slashed horizontally. The void distorted around An Bai's body as the power of motion and stillness locked down. Half of An Bai's body was penetrated by Golian. The power of motion and stillness intertwined at the blade's edge. If not for this, An Bai's body would have already been split in two. Lu Yin's gaze trembled. An Bai was truly powerful. His sneak attack had actually failed. The power of motion and stillness was even more tyrannical than he had imagined. An Bai roared in anger, and the power of motion and stillness erupted, forcing Golian out. It continuously retreated, and the river of sword Dao poured down once more. Lu Yin's sneak attack had almost killed it. An Bai hadn't expected Lu Yin to attack silently. Moreover, his attack was even fiercer than the blue unknowable. It continuously retreated as the river of sword Dao poured down. Suddenly, an invisible force pushed the Sword Dao River horizontally, causing the Sword Dao River's attack to miss. The Lock Force realm locked down all forces, and the River of Sword Dao's attack also brought about power. And I used this power to push the River of Sword Dao away. This feeling was similar to rune lines. The rune ancestors' rule of rune lines was that every action in the universe would have a corresponding effect. Rune lines were the embodiment of this effect, and rune lines could completely cancel out any action in the universe. One had to admit that the rune ancestors' creation was extremely far-sighted. Even the withering ancestor had said that things would move in the opposite direction when pushed to the extreme. One was the power of perception while the other was the power of the body. Lu Yin slashed down with Go Lien again. And I stared at Lu Yin, and the invisible force bombarded him. In this world, the enemy's attack could also become its attack. Lu Yin felt as if he had sunk into a swamp and couldn't exert any strength. Go Lien slowed down as the invisible force continued to drag it down. The more strength it exerted, the stronger the binding force became. End of chapter. Chapter 43-39. Lu Yin's pupils changed and turned into runes. Rune lines extended in front of him. An invisible force could be seen. An invisible world couldn't be represented by rune lines, but Bai's lockdown force boundary didn't just lock its own power, but also the influence of Lu Yin's power. Lu Yin could use rune lines to reflect that. Otherwise, if rune lines could reflect an invisible world, then there wouldn't be any invisible worlds in the universe. Lu Yin had tried before but rune lines couldn't do it. Now he could use it to reflect the rune lines of Bai's own power. Go Lien moved horizontally, avoiding the invisible force and landed. Another invisible force bombarded Bai's eyes. This force came from its own body and couldn't be reflected by rune lines, but it couldn't completely block Go Lien. Go Lien paused for a moment before slashing down, brushing past Bai's body. Bai kept retreating. Something wasn't right. This unknown force had actually dodged its own attack. Impossible, how could it have seen it? It didn't believe it and faced Go Lien's relentless pursuit. It used the power of Go Lien's slash to lock it down again, responding to the invisible force. It was dodged again and Go Lien brushed past its body again. Bai narrowly avoided it again and again. It didn't rely on Lu Yin's power. It relied on its own power. This unknown force could definitely see the invisible force that came from Bai's own body. Lu Yin gripped Go Lien tightly and slashed down, opening his celestial eye. Purple eye force formed a seal that trapped Bai. Bai couldn't escape and couldn't break out of the external eye. It could only fuse all the invisible force within the lockdown force boundary and attack. Lu Yin didn't need rune lines to know that the invisible force had gathered around Bai's body to resist Go Lien's slash. Thus he disappeared and teleported away. In an instant Lu Yin was gone. Bai's entire body was enveloped by the invisible force, and the lockdown force boundary's power erupted. This unknown force couldn't break through, and the stronger the attack, the more the invisible force would give it. It only needed to block for a moment, and the longer the stalemate, the better it would be. Bai had thought of all this. But he hadn't expected Lu Yin to disappear. Gone in an instant. What the hell? Where did he go? Bai looked around in a daze. It was really gone. How could it be so fast? This invisible world was enough to cover nearly half of the area covered by the Great Karma phenomenon, which was quite impressive. However, there was still no trace of Lu Yin. How could he have disappeared so quickly? Bai was uneasy and could only maintain the sealing force realm. However, several days passed and Lu Yin did not appear. Half a month later he still did not appear. It had no choice but to disperse the sealing force realm. But the moment the sealing force realm dissipated, a sense of horror appeared. The outer pupil incarnation slashed down with a Go Lien. Fortunately, Bai was prepared for this. The collected civilization and eternal life realm were attached to the surface of its body, giving it a terrifying power that directly collided with Go Lien. There was a loud bang, but Lu Yin didn't move, and Bai didn't even take half a step back. The void distorted and tore apart where Go Lien and Bai had collided. Bai was shocked. This unknown being was actually able to resist its power. It had thought that Lu Yin was only fast and wanted to use speed to counter it, but it hadn't expected him to be so strong as well. Previously, the unknown green energy was already extremely powerful. Even if it went all out, it could only fight it to a standstill. No matter how powerful this unknown energy was, it could not reach that level. Thinking up to this point, the power of motion and static overlapped, continuously acting on its body. The sealing force realm appeared once again. Luin was gone again. And I felt like it had punched the air. He had actually run away again. It roared, "Unknown, do you only know how to run? Get out here, unknown." In the distance, Luin frowned as he looked at Bai. His gaze shifted to Lan Meng and he instantly appeared. Lan Meng saw Luin suddenly appear and wanted to give him a stab, but he restrained himself. "Contact De Mao." De Mao's voice soon came from the door. "You still haven't dealt with it?" Luin said, "It's not heavily injured. If it was, it would have given me karma a long time ago." De Mao was dissatisfied. "Do you think it's so easy to get benefits? Not only will I reward you for killing Bai, but I'll also give you the mother forest. Do you know how long it'll take to gather that forest?" Lu Yin's gaze was cold. "No need to pretend. Since I've agreed to this deal, I'll complete it." "Then why are you looking for me? What's the characteristic of Bai's invisible world?" "It locks power for one's own use. I told you long ago." "How does it lock power? You want to learn it?" "Yes. It's a world formed by the laws of the universe. You can learn it, but you have to comprehend the laws of the universe. The power of motion and stillness. The power of motion and stillness is just the result. If you want to conform to the laws of motion and stillness, your understanding of the universe's power must reach a certain level. Otherwise, how can you comprehend it? It's because of this understanding that it can guide the Lockforce realm. It's not as simple as the result. The process is the most complicated." Luin looked into the distance. He understood this principle, but he also had the process. He was confident that his control of power wasn't inferior to Bai's, and he also had the Sky Palace to prevent his power from dissipating. If he could learn the Lockforce realm or use it to reverse Bai's control of power, he might be able to improve his own power. The Eternal Realm didn't only have to conform to one law of the universe. It could have 2, 3, or even more. When he broke through to the Progenitor Realm, he had 4 ancestral worlds, so why couldn't he have 4 laws of the universe? The later he broke through to the Eternal Realm, the more he understood the laws of the universe and had more control of his own power. This was Lu Yin's idea. Everything that human civilization had today was based on his continuous breakthroughs. If he hadn't become a rogue, had the power to kill Eternal Realm experts, and obtain teleportation, the Unknown Ones wouldn't have invited him to join, and human civilization wouldn't be as peaceful as it was now. Nothing was more important than his own breakthrough. However, the Eternal Realm was vast and endless, and his cultivation time was too short. Just because he couldn't break through to the Eternal Realm in a short time didn't mean that he couldn't increase his power. He could already fight an Eternal Realm expert who was at the peak of 1 law, and he could also fight someone who was at the peak of 2 laws. Sooner or later, he would be able to defeat an Eternal Realm expert who was at the peak of 2 laws. In the end, the Eternal Realm was a realm, and power wasn't necessarily limited to the realm. Deal with Bai as soon as possible, don't think too much. If possible, I want to comprehend thousands of laws of the universe, but that's impossible. An Eternal Realm expert who can comprehend 2 laws of the universe in their lifetime is already quite amazing. Each law represents the entire life of an Eternal Realm expert. How much time do you have to comprehend them? With that, the door disappeared. Luin looked at the vigilant Bai in the distance. De Mao was right, but he still wanted to try. It was like reading a book. Reading could allow one to comprehend and understand the world, and spying on an Eternal Realm expert's power could also allow one to comprehend and understand their power. Luin put away Golian and took a step forward. His body withered and disappeared in an instant, only to reappear in front of Bai and punch out. Bai didn't expect Luin to put away his weapon. No matter what this unknown wanted to do, he couldn't stop his power. The power of motion and stillness overlapped, and the Lockforce realm was a civilization's treasure. Boom. Luin retreated step by step with a loud bang. He wasn't just defeated by Bai's power, but also by his own. The Lockforce realm also gave his power to Bai. Again. Boom. 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 Luin was pushed back again and again, but he wasn't injured by the Lockforce realm's power absorption. Luin could feel that Bai had indeed been injured, or else he would have been even stronger. At the very least, the power of motion and stillness wasn't flowing smoothly. De Mao must have injured him severely, or else he wouldn't have been able to keep probing like this. Luin had been testing Bai's power for an entire month, and the entire universe had been shattered under the bombardment of power. There were unknown civilizations that had been lured to the Muddy Kingdom's battle, but any that came through the portal would immediately flee. Those that couldn't escape would be destroyed on the other side, not even caring about their own race. The power of this battle was too terrifying. There were eternal realms among the civilizations that had been lured here, but there were also differences in strength. The power of this battle clearly wasn't an ordinary eternal realm. Bai grew more and more helpless as he fought. He hadn't recovered from his injuries, and now he was being held back by Lu Yin. He couldn't suppress or escape, and this unknown was using him to probe the mysteries of his power. He knew it, but it was useless as he couldn't escape. The most disgusting thing was that this unknown was a scoundrel. He wasn't an eternal realm, so he didn't need to worry about the karmic restraints of the civilization's weapon. If he was an eternal realm expert, he would have a way to escape. At most, he would fight to the death. But his opponent wasn't even an eternal realm expert. The strong uneasiness made Bai's attacks weaker and weaker. Although he was still suppressing Lu Yin, he wasn't as domineering as before. Lu Yin was dissatisfied. Is this all you've got as one of the 8 elders of Muddy Kingdom? What kind of species are you? You have invisible speed and such power. Bai was irritable. Lu Yin said, I gave you a month but you didn't cherish it. Since that's the case, I won't be polite anymore. Then he disappeared. Bai had just raised his vigilance to the highest level, and Lu Yin's sudden disappearance almost made him vomit blood. Despicable, too despicable. Lu Yin frowned as he couldn't see clearly. Bai's use of power had already exceeded the height of being visible. It was impossible for him to comprehend it through the force lock realm and the power of motion and stillness. Every creature used their power differently. Karma was like that, and so was power. Perhaps there were millions of ways to use power. Comprehending by oneself was one way, and Bai's was another. If he wanted to comprehend Bai's power at the same time, it wouldn't be difficult for him to comprehend another way. In this 1 month he had finally seen it clearly. Since that was the case, it was time to end it. He slowly closed his eyes and emptied his mind. He raised his arm and the Golian entered his hand. On the surface of his body, his withered body suddenly recovered as he released all the absorbed power. He opened his eyes and teleported away. Chapter 43-40. In the distance, Bai remained vigilant, knowing that Lu Yin would launch a sneak attack. In the next instant, Lu Yin appeared. Lu Yin appeared directly in front of Bai, using the Golian horizontal slash and the celestial eye. Bai released the lock force realm, the power of motion and stillness overlapping. Boom. Whoosh. As Golian swept past, Bai's body was split into 2. Golian dodged the formless energy from the lockdown world, but Bai had to bear the brunt of Lu Yin's strongest attack. This was the first time Lu Yin had used this attack, and it would also be the last time. Bai's body slowly fell. How could this power be? General appointing platform hell appeared. Lu Yin waved his hand and was about to throw Bai in. At this moment, the formless power turned into a storm that swept up half of Bai's body. Lu Yin teleported to block it. A feeling of suffocation assaulted him. This was the power that he had just used. Right, the lock force realm hadn't disappeared yet. His power had been locked down by Bai. Bai used this power to throw half of his body out. Lu Yin had no choice but to dodge as he didn't want to take his own power head-on. Seeing half of Bai's body being thrown out, he teleported to block it again. This power was constantly being consumed and wasn't enough to throw Bai out of the lock force realm. Bai roared when he saw Lu Yin blocking in front of him again. Around half of his body, the power of motion and stillness overlapped over 100 times. Boom. The starry sky distorted as the terrifying power squeezed the stars from both sides. Motion and stillness were connected and combined with the remaining power of the lock force realm to press down on Lu Yin. Lu Yin teleported again and disappeared. Teleportation gave him an invincible advantage. Bai smiled bitterly, so that's how it is. I should have known. That was teleportation, no wonder I lost. No wonder. Losing is fine. Dying is fine, but you won't get anything. Bai roared. The power of motion and stillness that squeezed the stars surged towards him. Lu Yin's pupils shrank. Crack. The void cracked with Bai at the center. Lu Yin teleported out and saw Bai's broken body being swallowed by the void. You won't get anything. It saw the general appointment platform, and even though it didn't know what it was used for, it would rather die than be manipulated by Lu Yin. Lu Yin clenched his fist and teleported to the other half of Bai's body, kicking it into the hell of appointment stage. The karma heavenly Tao began to increase, but it didn't increase for long before it stopped. Bai was completely dead. Lu Yin felt that it was a pity as this Bai was too stubborn. This was in line with the characteristics of a cultivator who would rather die than let Lu Yin obtain karma. He was clearly in the eternal life realm, but the karma he gained was similar to that of the Great Circle crossing Kuer. What a pity, what a pity. Now all he could do was continue to wait. There was still that old man who was laughing. Actually, other than Demao and the old man there were still a few that he had not met before. Did they not need his help? Lu Yin teleported in front of Lan Meng, and at the same time, a portal appeared from 8 colors. Lu Yin, congratulations on killing one of the 8 elders of Mudwater Nation and Ibai. You have received a 4 stars mission reward. You may choose battle techniques, cultivation methods, knowledge, resources, and more. Lu Yin replied, I choose to acknowledge it. Please speak. I want to find other human civilizations. Lu Yin's expression was solemn. Demao and the old man had said that human civilizations were very special, and their corresponding rewards were not necessarily related to their combat power. A large part of the reason was related to the 9 bases. Even for the unknown, any remaining human civilization was very important. Lan Meng also looked at the portal curiously. How many human civilizations were left? 8 Colors' voice sounded, other than your 3 universes and Red Hero's underworld red coat, there are 3 more unknown human civilizations. Lu Yin's eyes lit up. They correspond to 2-star missions, 5-star missions, and, after a pause, 8 Colors continued, 6 stars missions. Lu Yin's body trembled. 6 stars missions? A 5-star mission was to destroy a fishing civilization. He had specifically asked what a 6 stars mission represented, but 8 Colors had not said, only telling him that he had to complete a 5-star mission to know. That was a mission above the fishing civilization. What human civilization needed a 6 stars mission? Could it be a powerhouse that was compatible with the 3 universal laws? Lu Yin first thought of the longevity civilization. He did not see Changji's strength clearly, but the suffocating feeling he brought was absolutely horrifying. It was not inferior to Red Heroes. If the longevity civilization had completely inherited the original 4th barrier, then Jianghu and the quintessence turbid treasure could definitely compete with Patriarch Shan. This civilization should be able to correspond to a 6 stars mission. There's a 2-star mission? Lu Yin was curious. 8 Colors said, it's just a remnant and unimportant human civilization. If you want to know, you can exchange it for a reward. Lu Yin pursed his lips, exchanging a 4 stars mission reward for a 2-star reward. You really know how to calculate. Up to you, 8 Colors said. Lu Yin could complete a 2-star mission at any time, but a 4 stars mission would be difficult to complete outside of this battlefield. How difficult would it be to destroy a civilization with 10 Eternal Realm experts and use other civilizations to destroy it? I've decided to save it first. I'll wait until I have enough 5-star rewards, Lu Yin said. 8 Colors replied, sure. Then good luck. This time, 8 Colors did not ask for Lu Yin's assistance. Clearly, the other battlefields were advantageous to the unknowns. How long will this war last? Lu Yin asked Lan Meng. Lan Meng shook his head. I'm not sure. Every war can be long or short. As far as I know, the shortest war ended in just a few days and the longest war. He glanced at Lu Yin but did not speak. Lu Yin understood that this was the war with the 9th Fort civilization. That war would definitely involve all members of the unknowns. Ever since he had come to this battlefield, Lu Yin had always had a question. What was the standard for the unknowns to participate in the war? Was it the invasion of the Mudwater Kingdom? However, 8 Colors had said that the unknowns did not have a circle, so there was no regional division. Even if the Mudwater Kingdom was close, it had nothing to do with the unknowns. This time, the Mudwater Kingdom was close to the Mud Doll being captured. Then for the unknowns, what standard did the Mudwater Kingdom meet? Back then, the Death Universe had swept past the 3 universes, and it had been even closer. Had there been a war with the Death Universe? Lu Yin asked this question, but he did not mention the Death Universe. Some situations needed to be analyzed on their own. Asking might lead to some clues, but it would also bring disaster. When was the last time the unknowns were forced to participate in a war? Lan Meng thought for a moment. A long time ago. At that time, I had just joined the unknowns and participated in a war against a fishing civilization. That fishing civilization was destroyed and I could only protect myself in that war. Lu Yin nodded and did not ask any more questions. That fishing civilization was clearly not the Death Universe. The Death Universe was one of the main culprits that had participated in the war that destroyed the 9th Fort civilization. How could it be so easily destroyed by the unknowns? He looked into the distance. Where was Demao? Was he not planning to appear? At that moment a strange scene appeared. A paper bridge was erected in the boundless starry sky. It stretched out from the distance and extended into the unseen distance. From Lu Yin's point of view, it was just a smear of white adorning the darkness, and he could not see the end. He hurriedly used mirroring, but he still could not see the end. This paper bridge exceeded the speed range of an eternal life realm cultivator by 20 years. He immediately teleported 10 times, but he still could not see the end of the bridge. This was already beyond the speed range of an ordinary eternal life realm cultivator by 100 years. As for how far it was, he did not know. Lu Yin returned, "Contact that old fellow." Lan Meng retracted his gaze from the paper bridge and contacted the old fellow. Soon the old fellow's voice sounded, "Young man, are you looking for me?" Lu Yin looked at the starry sky. "Did you see the paper bridge?" "Haha, of course, the entire battlefield can see it. This is Enai Bailuo's method. It is summoning the 8 elders." "Enai Bailuo's method? Covering the entire battlefield? How big is the battlefield?" "Very, very big." "Old man, don't keep me in suspense. Just tell me." "I can't say. I am not an ordinary eternal life realm cultivator, and your understanding is still at the level of ordinary eternal life realm cultivators." He paused for a moment. "Let's put it this way. To travel within a square inch, the eternal life realm is the prerequisite. If you do not reach the eternal life realm, you can only be trapped in your own universe. Only when you reach the eternal life realm can you travel within a square inch, but even then, the speed of an eternal life realm cultivator is only the speed of an ordinary person in a square inch. Within a square inch, the strength of a civilization and the strength of a creature is the most obvious indicator, the range of influence. An ordinary eternal life realm cultivator's attack range can encompass an entire universe or a few universes. If you encounter an existence whose attack range encompasses 10 universes, 100 universes, or even 10,000 universes, even if the two are equal in strength, who do you think has the right to speak? Lu Yin knew this principle. The right to speak was within the attack range. You don't have to pry into Enai Bailuo's attack range because it is beyond what you can bear. His opponent will not be you, but now you have been targeted by him. Ah. Lu Yin frowned. "Enai Bailuo summoned the 8 elders because of me? Otherwise. The Mudwater Kingdom has the absolute means of karma and is not afraid of any powerful civilization. Even if it is facing me, it dares to confront force with force. It is certain that we will not dare to kill it. The only thing it is afraid of is a technological civilization. However, the Mudwater Kingdom has reached the level of a fishing civilization. How small is the probability of encountering a similar technological civilization? They do not need to think at all and can rampage within a square inch. But they met you in this battle. You killed 2 of the 8 elders in a row. There are only 8 in the entire Mudwater Kingdom. Enai Bailuo is anxious. Haha, you have been targeted by him. You have damaged the foundation of the Mudwater Kingdom." The old man laughed. Lu Yin was afraid. "Aren't you afraid that I will not help you? Do you think that touching the long river of time is something an eternal life realm cultivator can do? Besides, as long as you kill one of the 8 elders, you will know the traces of the other human civilization. Little guy, you can't refuse." Lu Yin sneered. "Old man, don't think too highly of yourself." Ah. Chapter 43-41. Lu Yin looked at the paper bridge and his eyes flickered. It wasn't a good thing to be targeted by Enai Bailuo. Existence is reason. Lu Yin was confused. "What do you mean?" The old man sighed. "This is Enai Bailuo's power. Existence is reason. It believes that existence exists, so it appears reasonably. It's quite troublesome." "Isn't this equivalent to creation?" "It's not that exaggerated, but you don't have to worry. Enai Bailuo won't attack you." "What? Every one of the 8 elders has an opponent. Do you think Enai Bailuo's opponent will let him escape so easily?" Lu Yin was curious. "Who is Enai Bailuo's opponent?" "Hee hee. Fine, I won't say. Old man. You're disgusting. Hee hee." After ending the conversation, Lu Yin looked at the paper bridge again. Enai Bailuo also had an opponent, but that opponent definitely wouldn't kill him as the price was too high. The karma binding of an expert like Enai Bailuo was enough to make any existence lose its value. Just like Patriarch Shan, who had single-handedly killed an expert from the Dark Enlightenment civilization and was crippled by karma. Every life form that joined the unknown had a purpose, and they wouldn't sacrifice themselves for the unknown. The old man said that Enai Bailuo wouldn't attack him, but Lu Yin didn't believe him. He could use Enai Fan to threaten Lan Meng, but Enai Beluo's opponent could also allow Enai Beluo to attack him, as long as that unknown was hostile to him. The best way was to deal with the 8 elders and not help the old man. Touching the river of time was indeed tempting, but it wasn't as important as staying alive. This old man was too confident in himself. 8 elders? Enai Fan was the best choice, but this guy actually ran away. In the deep starry sky, the paper bridge extended, and at the beginning of the paper bridge was a huge country of mud. From time to time, white paper would appear in various forms. On the paper bridge, the creatures of the country of mud returned one by one. The paper bridge didn't build a bridge in the void, but it directly dragged the creatures of the country of mud back here. This was Enai Beluo. Within its range, existence was reason. Enai Gue's disappearance and Enai Bai's death were all caused by a scoundrel. This scoundrel has the ability to kill Enai Bai alone and is a huge threat to our country of mud. Scoundrel? How is that possible? Scoundrel is at most a match for Enai Jia, not even Enai Gue's match. How can he kill Enai Bai alone? Normally, Rascal shouldn't be a match for Nijia. Although Nijia is one of the 8 weakest elders of Nijia, he still has the power of inheritance and civilization. Ordinary eternal life realm experts can't compare to them. That's right, Enai Bai is ranked 5th even among us 8 elders. He can easily defeat Enai Jia. He shouldn't have died in the hands of a scoundrel. He should have been heavily injured first and then killed by a scoundrel. Even the mud isn't stupid. Once it feels that its life is in danger, it would choose the cause and effect. Even if it was seriously injured by some unknown force, it would be certain that it would be fine when facing this rascal. Even so, it still died. This rascal is very strong. Everyone, don't forget that the unknown has never joined the rogue before. This is the first one. These words silenced the 8 elders. Yes, they could question common sense, but they could not question the unknown. Enai Fan, you fought with this scoundrel. What do you think? Not only does this scoundrel have very strong battle prowess, he has also been hiding himself. He is extremely cunning and his speed is so fast that I can't even see him. Facing him, I don't even have the confidence to escape. So strong? Then how did you survive? The scoundrel suddenly left, so I left the battlefield. Let me deal with him. What about your opponent? Together. Don't think too highly of yourself. We can move unhindered not because of our battle prowess, but because of the cause and effect. Without this method, aside from Lord Enai Beluo, none of us would have survived. You think you can deal with 2 at once? Enai Fan, show me that scoundrel's form. I want to know what kind of scoundrel it is. All right. Lu Yin's image quickly appeared. It's this creature? Enai Beluo, you've seen it before? Yes, I've seen it in my battlefield. I didn't know that this creature would appear. I arranged for a mud doll to suppress it, but it was useless. So that scoundrel is from this civilization? I don't know. Is it in your battlefield? I've seen it too. I didn't know that there was such a creature. Is that so? Vast mountain smoke, sharp as rain. Take my sword, slay my enemy. The mountain sword lingers, revitalize my civilization. Take my sword, kill my enemy. The mountain sword is long, revive my civilization. A huge mountain towered in the sky. This mountain represented a civilization. This was not a part of the universe, but rather the mountain sword sect. Countless cultivators faced the mountain and bowed. Each cultivator carried a stone sword on their back. The mountain sword sect's swords were stone swords that had been taken from the mountains and forged by themselves. At the top of the mountain, an old man gazed into the distance. He suddenly raised his hand, grabbed the stone sword in front of him and slashed out. This was the mountain sword sect's sword of grand momentum. A mud doll in the distance faced the old man's sword of grand momentum. White paper fluttered out and turned into countless rings that slashed out to resist the sword. The old man's stone sword kept dodging. Once it shattered the rings, it would bring about karma restraints. Because each ring represented a civilization, the karma restraints of a civilization were not easy to bear. The entire mountain sword sect had only one eternal life realm cultivator, and if he died, the mountain sword sect would be finished. A few years ago, the unknown door opened and led the mountain sword sect into the battlefield. The mountain sword sect and the mud kingdom started a war. The old man wanted to destroy the door as soon as possible, but it just so happened that there was a mud doll nearby. The old man had tried to force the mud doll back several times and leave the battlefield. Although the mud doll was not strong, the karma restraints brought about by collecting civilizations restricted the old man. The old man could not easily defeat it, so the stalemate had lasted until now. The stone sword suddenly expanded and suppressed the stars. slashing towards the mud doll. The mud doll had faced this move more than once. The stone sword was not sharp, but it was powerful and heavy, stirring the void. It could not resist, but because the stone sword was not sharp, it could not easily kill it. Even if the old man was willing to bear the karma restraints, it would not be easy to kill it. Bang bang bang. The stone sword slapped the void crazily. The old man walked out of the mountain sword sect, carrying the stone sword and trying to push the mud doll out of the door. If it did not work, he could just break the door. But the mud doll's civilization weapon was wrapped around the door. If he really broke the door by force, the karma restraints on the old man would make it difficult for him to move. In such a state, how was it different from death? At the foot of the mountain, the old man's disciples were indignant. We are unfilial. We could not break through to immortality and resist the calamity for our master. How many years has it been? We let our master bear it alone. From bringing the mountain sword sect out of the universe until now, it has been all by our master alone. We are unfilial. We are unfilial. The old man sighed. Idiot, forget it, forget it. The more you think, the more you can't break through to immortality. Perhaps this is the fate of our human civilization. If we can survive this calamity, so what if I give up my life? As he spoke, he raised the stone sword high. I'm stupid. I have comprehended the power of the stone sword, but I can't make the decision to kill. I have harmed the human civilization. Master, the old man pushed the stone sword horizontally and wanted to break the door by force. Even if he was bound by karma, it was still better than the destruction of the civilization. Although an immortal realm bound by karma couldn't attack, it was enough to restrain other immortal realms and ensure the temporary safety of the human civilization. Put it down and you will be free. The mud doll threw all the collected civilizations over, and they were constantly smashed by the stone sword. The old man closed his eyes, and the karma restraints continued to bind him. This feeling was like falling into a swamp, as if there were countless eyes looking at him. The death of these civilizations was counted on him. Although the mud doll also bore nearly half of it, he was not an immortal realm at all, so he didn't care. Just at the moment when the stone sword was about to hit the door, the mud doll had been squeezed to the other side of the door. The sword stopped. It was a creature from another muddy country, one of the 8 elders and I. Above the mountain sword sect, the old man's eyes widened. Not good. He suddenly exerted force and the aura of life boiled. The mountain sword's profound meaning pressed down. At the same time, the invisible world was released, and the mountain sword became bigger again as if covering the entire sky. On the other side of the door, an eye was disdainful. The gap was too big. It was just an ordinary immortal realm. The white paper fluttered, condensed, and pierced out. The white paper pierced the stone sword, and along the stone sword, it directly pierced the old man's shoulder. Blood splattered on the mountain peak, and the old man retreated step by step. He gritted his teeth and forced himself to use his strongest strength to break the door, but it was already over. The white paper shuttled back and forth, constantly piercing the old man's body. Blood splattered in the sky. The old man's disciples' eyes widened, and they screamed crazily. Some disciples rushed up to stop the white paper, but the paper pierced through their bodies and they exploded and died. The old man roared and retracted the stone sword. The stone sword faced the white paper as if it was nothing. It was directly penetrated, and the white paper pierced the old man's body again. The old man spat out a mouthful of blood and knelt on one knee. His face was pale. The sky above the mountain sword sect darkened. Everyone looked up and watched in despair as the mountain peak cracked. The white paper changed and an eye appeared on it. An eye came quickly and disappeared even faster. At the same time, he took the mountain sword sect with him. Not long after an eye left, a shadow appeared and was surprised. This is the remnants of the human civilization? The muddy country took this civilization away to deal with Lu Yin. It seems that Cyan and the others really let Lu Yin take action. Interesting. Under the starry sky, Lu Yin sat cross-legged with Lan Meng nearby. Half a year had passed since he killed an Ai Bai and saw an Ai Beiluo gather the 8 elders. The paper bridge had long since disappeared, and the battlefield should have regained its peace. After all, the 8 elders hadn't appeared. The unknown ones hadn't taken the initiative to gather all of the unknowns to attack the muddy country. The country's gangster-like nature terrified everyone. Lu Yin couldn't destroy the entire muddy country by himself, especially with Ai Beiluo on the battlefield. He wouldn't even go for the final harvest. It was too dangerous. Contact the old man and see what's going on, Lu Yin said. Lan Meng contacted the old man. The 8 elders aren't here yet. What's the rush? If they don't come, Are we going to keep wasting time on this battlefield? Time has no meaning to eternal beings. What's the standard for a forced conscription? Under what circumstances will the war begin? Chapter 43-42. The old man said, I know about this, but I won't tell you. I don't know either. Let's talk about it after we worship the divine tree. Kid, it's meaningless for you to keep guarding against the unknown. Unless you recreate 9 bases, it doesn't matter if the unknown kills you or not. What's the difference between you appearing here and appearing in the unknown? Lu Yin said, there's a country of mud here, but there's no trace. Haha, young man, be more energetic, be less scheming. When you reach my age, you'll regret not being impulsive back then. Eternal life doesn't mean you won't grow old. Lu Yin stopped talking. Lan Meng ended the communication and was also silent. The unknown was afraid of humans, but they allowed Lu Yin to grow. In Lan Meng's opinion, this was very unwise. Since they were destined to be enemies, they should be destroyed. But in the unknown, rules were more important than anything. Another few months passed. Above the stars, the paper bridge was built. It came. Lu Yin narrowed his eyes, and Ai Beluo had specially gathered the 8 elders. They would either do their best to avoid him or kill him. He decided not to participate in the old man's battlefield. Did this old man really think that he cared so much about touching the river of time? Of course. He really cared. But it was not as important as his life. He was not going anywhere in this war. The paper bridge disappeared, and a creature of the country of mud appeared in the distance. Lu Yin used the mirroring technique to look, and his pupils constricted. Human. The creature of the country of mud in the distance was a mud doll, and the mud doll was attached to the head of a middle-aged human man as if it had swallowed the middle-aged man. Lu Yin suddenly looked at Lan Meng. There are humans on this battlefield? Lan Meng was confused. I don't know. Lu Yin frowned and stared into the distance. It was indeed a human. It was not fake. The unknown had also lured human civilization into this battlefield. Where was the human civilization? It could not be the 3 universes or the red coats under the stars. These 2 civilizations were in the protection period. Then, it was another human civilization that he did not know about. This was Ai Beluo's method to deal with him. He deliberately used this human to lure him. Contact the old man. Lan Meng immediately contacted him. Human? The old man was surprised. Oh, it's really possible. The unknown knows about more than one human civilization. I don't know why it hasn't been destroyed. But it's normal for it to be lured to participate in the war. Even though 9th base was once glorious and prosperous, but now the remnants of the human civilization are no longer a threat. In the eyes of the unknown, they are the same as other civilizations that can be lured into the battlefield. Of course, I'm talking about the weak remnants of the human civilization. The human civilization that requires a 5-star mission reward or even higher is not included in this list. Lu Yin asked, is this the human civilization that can be learned after completing a 2-star mission? I think so. What? Do you want to fight? Alright, I almost forgot. Humans are very complicated creatures. When they are heartless, they can betray everything. When they have feelings, they can be fearless of death. This is Ai Beluo's test for you. He is trying to determine if you care about your own kind. If I care, I'll be falling into its trap. The human civilization will definitely be controlled by it. Not bad. What if I don't care? That human civilization will be collected just like the other civilizations collected by the creatures of the Mudwater Kingdom. Of course, there will be no pain in death, but if you care, unless you have the confidence to save them, what awaits them will be torture worse than death. The old man gloated. Value can give you a perfect life, but it can also give you a life of despair. Under the starry sky, the clay doll leisurely attached itself to the middle-aged man's head. The middle-aged man walked with difficulty like a puppet in extreme pain. Suddenly, time stagnated and gray flowed. Lu Yin instantly appeared in front of the middle-aged man and pointed at the clay doll. The clay doll saw it and wanted to fight back, but it found that it could not move. The purple eye power had trapped it. All of this happened in an instant. The next moment, Lu Yin's finger pierced through the clay doll and pulled it off the middle-aged man's body. He threw it into the god catalog. Triple firmament sword intent. Hidden sword. The sword flashed wildly, and the clay doll could not fight back and was severely injured. As an eternal realm, even if it was forcefully pushed to the eternal realm, it should have been able to fight back against Lu Yin. However, it could not fight back. Teleportation, time stagnation, and Lu Yin's rich experience in fighting the 8 elders of the Mudwater Kingdom on the battlefield. If he encountered an opponent at the same level as Mud Ghost, Lu Yin was confident that he would not be able to fight back. The absolute methods that the Mudwater Kingdom was so proud of were worthless in front of him. The middle-aged man's body collapsed, and Lu Yin supported him. They landed on a planet that was overgrown with vegetation and filled with all sorts of auras. Strange creatures made noises, but when Lu Yin landed on the planet, they all calmed down due to fear. "No, don't kill it." The middle-aged man opened his hazy eyes, blood vessels sticking to his eyelids as he spoke with difficulty. Lu Yin said, "I didn't kill it. It has its uses." Cough, cough, cough. Lu Yin healed the middle-aged man, but he found that the man's organs were shattered. His meridians and blood were congealing. He could not live at all. "Thank you." The middle-aged man used his remaining strength to grab Lu Yin's arm. He opened his hazy eyes and said in a hoarse and weak voice, Save us. Please save us. We are from the Mountain Sword sect and so are you. Human, please save us." Lu Yin's heart was heavy. "No need to say anything. I'll see for myself. You rest." He then sent out a karmic spiral through the middle-aged man's body to see his past. The man could not speak, and Lu Yin could only use karma to understand as much as possible. The Mountain Sword sect. Lu Yin watched calmly as his karmic past appeared. Time passed slowly and an hour later the middle-aged man died. Lu Yin closed his eyes and suppressed his emotions. The Mountain Sword sect was a human civilization that existed in a different universe. It was different from the Xuanhuan universe and the Ninefold universe. In that universe the humans had been defeated. Fortunately, the Mountain Sword sect's ancestor was an eternal realm powerhouse. Even though he had lost to other eternal realms in the same universe, he was still able to protect himself. He brought the entire human race to hide in the Mountain Sword sect and left that universe. If they did not leave, the human civilization would eventually be destroyed. The Mountain Sword sect's ancestor had led the human civilization across the universe in search of a suitable home. They had experienced many dangers and wars, but when they found a suitable home, they were targeted by the unknown and became one of the civilizations that the unknown could make use of. The Mountain Sword sect could not resist the unknown. To the unknown they were nothing more than ants. The Eternal Realm ancestor had to fight for the unknown time and time again to protect the Mountain Sword sect's human heritage. This middle-aged man was a disciple of the Mountain Sword sect's ancestor, and he had personally seen the ancestor's clothes stained with blood time and time again. He had walked on the brink of death time and time again trying to escape the unknown. The Mountain Sword sect was crying. Everyone mourned for the ancestor, but no one could replace him. Finally, the entire Mountain Sword sect had been captured. Through the middle-aged man's karmic past, Lu Yin knew that they had been targeted by the Mudwater Kingdom because of him. He had captured Ni Gue and killed Ni Bai, causing the Mudwater Kingdom to suffer heavy losses. Coincidentally, his own race had been present on the battlefield, so the Mudwater Kingdom naturally had to act. It was all because of him. However, Lu Yin had not expected that a human civilization would appear on this battlefield. If he had killed Ni Fan, the Mountain Sword sect would not have been in such a miserable state. It was all because of him. Lu Yin clenched his fists. "I'm sorry." He silently looked at the middle-aged man's corpse. Not long after, the clay doll fell and was crushed to the ground. Lu Yin looked down at the doll. "Where is the Mountain Sword sect?" The doll took out a piece of white paper and folded it into a paper bridge. "This can take you there." It was obvious that this was a test from the Mudwater Kingdom. Just as the old man had said, the Mudwater Kingdom was not sure whether this human civilization cared about its own race. This was just a test. It did not matter if they did not care, but if they did, they could use this opportunity to get rid of Lu Yin. The Mudwater Kingdom was not afraid of an unknown number of powerful eternal realms, but they were afraid of a scoundrel like Lu Yin. The Mudwater Kingdom could not tolerate such an existence, especially since Lu Yin had caused them to suffer heavy losses. "What if I don't go?" "If you don't show up, half of you will die," the doll replied. Lu Yin exhaled and the naming platform hell appeared. He threw the doll in to increase his karmic power while he stared into the distance. The Mountain Sword sect was not a sect, but rather a remnant of human civilization. All of them had gathered in the Mountain Sword sect under the protection of that Eternal Realm ancestor. That was an entire civilization. This civilization should be the same as the Tianyuan universe and the others. They had once been bait, but because of Red Hero's betrayal and the collapse of the second stronghold, those powerful enemies had stopped chasing after the bait and instead attacked the 9th base. That was how they had survived. They were the same as the Mountain Sword sect. Lu Yin could not watch as half of the Mountain Sword sect's people died, and it was all because of him. But how could he save them? What awaited him was what the Mudwater Kingdom believed to be a hopeless situation. Lu Yin was not so arrogant as to think that he could single-handedly break the deadlock of a fishing civilization. His teleportation, crow immobilization, karma, and so on could not make up for the huge gap between him and an absolute powerhouse. Lan Ming arrived and the door beside him was still open. The old man's voice could be heard. "Little guy, are you troubled?" Lu Yin did not answer. "Haha, as expected, you haven't cultivated for long enough. You haven't seen this universe clearly." Lu Yin's eyes moved and he looked at the door. These words sounded familiar, as Grandmaster Grass had said them several times before. The universe is a cycle, and all living things are formed from the material of the universe itself. When a living thing dies, its material will recombine to form another living thing. The so-called reluctance to part with life comes from emotional ties. Humans have too many emotional ties, which is why they have ended up like this. If you don't save them, then this war will quickly pass and their lives will have nothing to do with you. It is their own incompetence. Haha, or do you think that you can save them by yourself? Chapter 43-43. Lu Yin said calmly, "I can't save him." You can help me?" "Kid, are you kidding?" Lu Yin said seriously, "I'm not kidding. I can help, but I won't." Lu Yin wasn't surprised. "It's unknown." "Unknowingly, who can help me?" "No, your threat to the Mudwater Kingdom is above all the unknowns, so in this deadlock, you'll either be facing Ni Beluo or an existence second only to him. Even if the unknowns can deal with such an existence, it'll be troublesome. You can't afford this price." Lu Yin looked at Lan Meng. "Contact Ba Se." Lan Meng ended the call with the old man. He contacted Ba Se. "Ba Se, can the 4 stars reward help me save the Mountain Sword sect from the Mudwater Kingdom?" Lu Yin said bluntly. He couldn't save them by himself. The old man was right. The other side of the deadlock was either Ni Beluo or an existence second only to him. Such an existence was at least at Mao's level. Teleportation wasn't omnipotent, especially when facing Ni Beluo. He couldn't even escape. Ni Beluo had killed Xianling. Ba Se replied, "On the battlefield, the rewards are much more than usual. But the rewards are also much more than usual. Are you sure you want to exchange for the Mountain Sword sect's reward here?" "Yes." "The 4 stars reward isn't enough." Lu Yin's eyes flashed. "The 4 stars reward isn't enough?" "The Mountain Sword sect. The sect is outside, and the Mountain Sword sect's ancestor is inside. If you want to completely save the Mountain Sword sect, you need to kill the Mud Blade. The Mud Blade is second only to Ni Beluo. It's equivalent to a master with 2 laws of the universe. Killing the Mud Blade on the battlefield can get the 5 stars reward. In the current battlefield, the unknowns are willing to kill the Mud Blade, so if you want to save the Mountain Sword sect, you need the 5 stars reward. It also depends on whether the unknowns are willing to help. No unknowns were willing to help. Lu Yin knew what the unknowns were thinking. They would rather give the reward to themselves than bear the burden of karma. Which unknowns are fighting the Mud Blade? No comment. Ba Se, if I want to save the Mountain Sword sect outside, is the reward of a 4 stars mission enough? Enough to save the sect. Make sure that no one in the sect is injured or killed. Not enough. How much do you want? 2 4 stars mission rewards. Otherwise, we won't be able to ensure the safety of the humans in the sect. Lu Yin directly took out Mud Ghost from Mount Supreme and added the karma. "I hope you can keep your word and help me save everyone in the Mountain Sword sect." With that, he slashed down and killed Mud Ghost. 1 Mud Ghost, 1 Mud 100, 2 4 stars mission rewards. This was the most he could do for now. Otherwise, even if he killed another one of the 8 elders and received a 5-star mission reward, it would be useless without Wuxi willing to help. "Wait here." The portal disappeared. Lu Yin closed his eyes, his mind filled with thoughts of the Mountain Sword sect's ancestor. That benevolent senior had spared no effort for the Mountain Sword sect's human heritage, and had returned from the battlefield covered in blood time and time again. "I'm sorry, senior. I can't save you." Although he had never met the Grand Elder before, this Grand Elder was the same as Elder Chan and the others. He had contributed to the human civilization. "I'm sorry." At the same time, under another starry sky, the huge muddy kingdom was like a hedgehog. All the weapons of civilization had folded into blades and stabbed out from all directions of the muddy kingdom. This was the muddy kingdom of the Mud Blade, and below it was the Mountain Sword sect. Just like the middle-aged man who was covered in cement, the muddy kingdom was also attached to the Mountain Sword sect. From afar, the peak of the Mountain Sword sect was gray. A blade suddenly pierced out of the muddy kingdom and slashed into the distance. With a bang, the red sword swung and slapped the blade away. Red Hero walked out of the void and looked at the muddy kingdom. He also saw the mountain sword sect under the muddy kingdom's control. Humans? In the muddy kingdom, the mud blade appeared, and the 2 white blades beside him were weapons of civilization. In the muddy kingdom, the top 8 elders all had 2 weapons of civilization and 2 eternal realm powerhouses. This was the result of the muddy kingdom's many years of continuous expeditions to find eternal realm powerhouses. For the muddy kingdom, fishing for eternal realm powerhouses wasn't to destroy the civilization, but to increase the strength of the weapons of civilization. The more eternal realm powerhouses they collected, the stronger the weapons of civilization. Looking at the entire muddy kingdom, the reason why the mud blade was the strongest was that it collected 3 eternal realm powerhouses as weapons of civilization. This is your race, right? How about it? Do you want to save him? The mud blade made a sound very dry and cold. On the opposite side, Red Hero didn't care. Where did you find him? This battlefield. Oh. Just one word and that was it. The mud blade stared at Red Hero and saw the indifference in his eyes. That ruthlessness really didn't care. This civilization didn't seem to care about its own race. There were too many creatures in the universe who didn't care about their own race. It seemed that he couldn't wait for that rascal to save him. In that case he would kill this guy first. Thinking of this, Mud Blade slashed at Red Hero with 2 long white swords beside him. On this battlefield, it had fought with Red Hero more than once. Both of them had stopped at a certain point, so much so that they couldn't even see each other's true strength. Red Hero didn't want to be entangled with it at all. Every time they fought there was karma. Even if he defeated the Mud Blade in the end, he would be crippled by the designated karma. So this battle didn't benefit him at all. He just needed to stall the Mud Blade. This was also the basis of the war with the Mud Kingdom. No loss was a win. Bang bang bang, the red sword and the blade clashed in the starry sky. Although Red Hero didn't want to fight the Mud Blade, he couldn't completely let go. Otherwise he wouldn't be able to answer to the unknown. While they were fighting, the mountain sword sect was gone. Red Hero looked into the distance in amazement. He saw a door swallow the mountain sword sect and then the mountain sword sect was gone. Did it do it? The Mud Blade was also stunned. Where was the mountain sword sect? Was gone? The unknown saved the mountain sword sect. Logically, the unknown shouldn't care about such a weak civilization, not to mention that the eternal realm of this civilization had been collected by it. Even if it took the mountain sword sect away, what was the point? Or was it because of that rascal? It regretted. Red Hero's indifferent attitude made it think that the rascal didn't care and wouldn't come to save, so it didn't keep an eye on the mountain sword sect. Who would have thought that it would be saved so easily? It seems that you still care about your own race. You pretended to be so real. The Mud Blade was annoyed. It cut the starry sky and stretched endlessly. Red Hero dodged and stared at the Mud Blade. You're not testing me. It's because of another human. So what? The Mud Blade kept cutting down the civilization's heavy weapons. Red Hero also regretted it. He thought that the Mud Blade brought the mountain sword sect to influence him, and he laughed at the Mud Blade for being too naive. But the moment the unknown saved the mountain sword sect, he knew that he was wrong. The mountain sword sect didn't want to influence him, but Lu Yin. Lu Yin also joined the battle. With his rascal identity and powerful strength, he would definitely cause losses to the Mud Kingdom. It just so happened that the Mud Kingdom found the human civilization on this battlefield, so they wanted to use the human civilization to deal with Lu Yin. This was a dead end for Lu Yin. But his ruthlessness made the Mud Blade think that the human didn't care about his own race. The more he didn't care, the more Mud Blade thought that Lu Yin didn't care, so he didn't take any precautions and saved the mountain sword sect. It was equivalent to saying that he helped Lu Yin imperceptibly. Damn it. Red Hero was angry. Why didn't you say it was to deal with Lu Yin? Lu Yin. The Mud Blade was puzzled. Is that the rascal's name? Also, what do you mean by that? Red Hero retreated and stared at the Mud Blade without saying a word. He turned around and left. The Mud Blade looked at the empty starry sky. This guy left. What did he just say? Did this unknown want to deal with that rascal as well? If that was the case, he wouldn't drag him down anymore. Thinking of this, the Mud Blade took out a paper bridge. If this unknown didn't drag him down, he could leave this battlefield and kill that rascal. It all depended on whether or not this unknown would ruin it. The paper bridge was set up, and the Mud Blade took the Mud Kingdom onto it and disappeared in an instant. Red Hero watched from afar and didn't stop him. This action would definitely cause the 8 colors to be dissatisfied. Every unknown on this battlefield had their own enemies and they didn't need to kill them. Their mission was to stall them, but he allowed the mud blade to leave. He didn't want to offend the 8 colors, but the most important thing right now was to deal with Luin. As long as Luin died, all of his problems would be solved. Compared to this, as long as he didn't openly break the rules of the unknown, they wouldn't do anything to him. On the other side, Luin watched as the door in front of him opened and the mountain sword sect appeared. He was excited that he had been saved so quickly. Lan Meng was also surprised. This was too efficient. There were countless survivors in the mountain sword sect, and now that they were rescued they were all grateful to Luin. They were curious about which human civilization Luin came from, but they also wanted to save their ancestor. Everyone in the mountain sword sect knelt down and begged Luin to save their ancestor. Luin had no choice but to move everyone to Mount Supreme and put them away. 8 colors, thank you. The 8 colors said, "This is the reward for the mission. You've used it up for this battle. Good luck." With that, the door disappeared. Not far away, Lan Meng felt that it was a pity. That was 2 4-stars mission rewards and it was used up just like that. If it was used outside the battlefield, even powerful Eternal Realm cultivators wouldn't be able to resist the temptation. Contact the old man. You're looking for me? I want to know which unknown was fighting against the mud blade. You saved that human? The old man was surprised. Seems like you used an incredible reward. It wasn't surprising that he could guess it. If the other side was mud blade, even the 8 colors wouldn't have been able to save him so quickly. Only the mud blade was fundamentally different from mud blade. 2 4-stars mission rewards. What a pity, what a pity. Once you kill me you'll be able to exchange it for a 5-star mission reward. Do you know how tempting a 5-star mission reward is? Even I would be tempted. What a pity. I won't help you anymore. Oh? You don't want to touch the river of time anymore? If I kill the 8 elders again, Mudblade will definitely deal with me personally. Even if you don't kill him, the result will be the same. What do you mean? Luin was stunned. At that moment, a paper bridge appeared, and an indescribably sharp aura with a suffocating sense of horror rushed towards him. Chapter 43-44. Lu Yin's pupils shrank and he subconsciously teleported away. Lan Meng had also sensed it. But without teleportation he couldn't escape at all. The edge brushed past his body and he was almost instantly killed. He hurriedly hid in the coffin and fled. An extremely powerful enemy had appeared. Why was it here? It had to be for Luin. This was Mudwater Kingdom's killing intent. There was a loud bang. The white blade slashed down. It slashed down on the blue coffin. The blue coffin was split open. Within the coffin, Lan Meng was shocked. He controlled the coffin to escape. Where was Luin? That bastard had actually not taken him with him. Luin. Up in the sky, the mud blade descended. It raised its hand and the other white blade fell, slashing at the blue coffin. The 2 blades landed at the same point, shattering the blue coffin. Inside, Lan Meng had nowhere to run. He leapt up. You're looking for Luin. He ran away. You can't catch up to him now. It has nothing to do with me. Beside the mud blade, the 2 white blades slashed down again. Their target was Lan Meng. Lan Meng gritted his teeth. At the same time he contacted 8 colors. A small door appeared beside him. 8 colors, save me. Lan Meng roared. The white sword fell. Lan Meng raised it, and the divine power in his body surged wildly. Blue threads wrapped around the sword's hilt. He was going all out. The weapon of civilization, the white blade that contained immortality, slashed at the blue sword. One strike, just one strike, and the blue sword was split in 2. The other white blade fell, slashing down in front of Lan Meng. At the same time, Lan Jia descended, and a halo of light surrounded the mud blade, trapping it. The moment Lan Jia descended, the second white blade fell. The blade cut through Lan Meng's body, killing him. 2 strikes broke the coffin. 2 strikes killed Lan Meng. The mud blade stood high in the sky, looking into the distance. Lan Meng's death didn't cause it any ripples. There were strong and weak unknowns. It wasn't that it hadn't killed them in the past, but this unknown had just happened to run into it. Far away, Luin saw it with his mirroring technique. The mud blade slashes carried an indescribable chill. 2 strikes had shattered the coffin, which was about the same destructive power as the Azure Lotus Imperial Wheel. 2 strikes had killed Lan Meng, and he hadn't even been able to resist. Although Lan Meng had fallen from his peak due to his injuries, he shouldn't have been this weak. There was something wrong with those 2 sabers. This was Mudblade, and it actually appeared on this battlefield. Then Mudblade's opponent was most likely Red Hero. Only Red Hero would risk offending 8 colors and let Mudblade go. He wanted to use Mudblade to kill him. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. This Mudblade was too dangerous. Suddenly the Mudblade rushed towards him. He could feel himself. For a powerhouse like Clay Blade, the speed distance of 20 years in the Eternal Life realm was not difficult to cross. Red Hero's attack could cover the speed distance of 150 years. No matter how bad Clay Blade was, it was enough to cover the speed distance of 20 years. It had found him. The attack range didn't mean that it could be seen, but for a powerhouse like Mudblade, it wasn't difficult to sense the enemy's position. Separated by the speed of the Eternal Life realm for 20 years, the Mudblade slashed out. The sharpness of the blade cut through the starry sky of the universe, wanting to split the distance into 2. What a terrifying slash. It was on a completely different level compared to Enigui and Enibai. No wonder he was known as an existence second only to Enibi Luo. Lu Yin took a deep breath and teleported away. In the distance, Mudblade was stunned. So fast? Teleportation? It was definitely teleportation. Otherwise, how could a scoundrel appear so far away in an instant? It couldn't do that. But how could this civilization teleport? Wasn't this the power of that strange bird? This was troublesome. With teleportation, Mudblade couldn't catch him at all. Mudblade stared at Lu Yin. No matter what, it had to chase. Lu Yin teleported again and again, but he couldn't completely escape from Mudblade's perception. He was fishing for Mudblade and bringing it away from the place where he killed Lan Meng. Lan Meng was dead, but the blue line was still there. That line was Lu Yin's target. As for Mudblade, he was no match for it and didn't plan to fight. What about 8 Color? Why didn't she contact him? Lan Meng was dead. Now was the time. Lu Yin used mirroring to look at the place where Lan Meng had died and teleported closer. The void was constantly slashed, and the range of Mudblade's slashes was close to 100 years. The speed of an ordinary Eternal Life realm powerhouse couldn't compare to Red Hero's, so naturally, it couldn't catch up with Lu Yin. Lu Yin arrived at the place where Lan Meng had died and looked at the broken hanging coffin and Lan Meng's corpse. Lan Meng had been talking not long ago, but now he was dead. An Eternal Life realm powerhouse couldn't control his own life. Mudblade killed without hesitation and didn't care about karma at all. He thought that Lan Meng would be included. His divine power surged and Lu Yin looked around the void and found it. The blue line shuttled through the starry sky. Lu Yin teleported and grabbed it. The blue line entered his body and went straight to the Divine Force planet. There were now 2 Divine Force planets in the starry sky of his heart. One was the original one, and the other was condensed to suppress the silver line. Now Lu Yin needed to condense a 3rd Divine Force planet for this blue line. In the distance, Mudblade waved his 2 white blades and slashed at Lu Yin across the void. Lu Yin dodged and teleported several times to get close to Mudblade. When he was close enough, he said, "You killed Lan Meng first and now you want to kill me. Aren't you afraid of karma binding you and making you unable to move?" Mudblade's voice was terrifyingly low. "I have plenty of time to sleep. Why don't you include Lan Meng as a civilization treasure?" "I don't know. I can't include him." Mudblade shouted, "Why can you teleport?" Lu Yin raised his eyebrows. "I come from Xianling." Mudblade was stunned. "From Xianling?" While it was stunned, Lu Yin teleported away. He was best at fishing in troubled waters. Now that he knew so many fishing civilizations, he could say that he came from the Death Universe next time. "If you don't believe me, I'll show you the bone language. It's easy to fool others after cultivating so much." Suddenly he stopped. A slash flashed past his eyes and at the same time an arm appeared. Lu Yin looked at the arm. It was a human arm. He looked back. He couldn't see through the distance of 20 years, but he knew what he could see at this moment. It was the arm of the Mountain Sword Sex ancestor. Mudblade was still controlling the Mountain Sword Sex ancestor. In the distance, Mudblade's body was attached to the Mountain Sword Sex ancestor's head. The ancestor's entire body was drenched in blood. One of his arms was gone, and his body was distorted as if it had no bones. It was extremely miserable. Red Hero had made Mudblade think that humans didn't care about their own race, so the unknown had easily rescued the Mountain Sword Sex ancestor. However, since the Mountain Sword Sex ancestor had been rescued, it meant that humans cared about their own race. This scoundrel was one of them. Mudblade couldn't catch up to Lu Yin anymore. He only needed to teleport 5 more times to completely shake it off. Since he couldn't catch up, he could only use the Mountain Sword Sex ancestor to force it. It would be best if it succeeded, but if it didn't he would retreat and Mudblade would attack. Of course no one wanted this to happen. If Mudblade attacked it would attract the attention of the unknown. Mudblade was waiting but Luin had already stopped. Would the scoundrel return? In the distance, Luin looked at the arm and fell silent. Mudblade wasn't in a hurry to attack. The longer Luin stayed silent, the more likely it would succeed. It was at this point that a door appeared and an 8-colored voice sounded out, "Luin, you may leave the battlefield. We've already won this battle. Mudwater Kingdom has no chance of turning defeat into victory. Ramming is dead. I know. War brings death. Why would Mudblade appear on this battlefield? There will be an investigation after this battle. Since it's here, I don't want it to return to Mudwater Kingdom alive. Are there any unknowns who can help me?" Mudblade's combat power is second only to Mudblade, and Mudwater Kingdom has already seen through this battle. As long as there are unknowns involved, Mudblade's karma will be bound to them. No unknowns are willing to risk the consequences of killing a Mudblade. This was within Lu Yin's expectations. There were too many karmic restraints when killing a Mudblade, especially when the Mudblade had 2 civilization treasures and 2 eternal realm cultivators. It could be said that killing a Mudblade would not just be a Mudblade, but also a civilization and other eternal realm cultivators. The price was simply too great. This was also the direct reason why Damao and the others asked for his help. Otherwise, the karma of an immortal realm wouldn't be enough to make them put down their pride and pay such a price. Mudwater Kingdom was a scoundrel, one who didn't even want to fight the unknowns. "This battle is over, right?" Luin asked. Basset said, "You could say that." Luin sighed, "I understand. Do you think I'm important to the unknowns?" "Every unknowns is important." 8-Color's voice was indifferent. Luin laughed. She didn't even mention Lan Meng's death. Both were important and unimportant. "If you're important then help me if I'm in danger." With that he teleported towards Mudblade. The Mountain Sword Sect's ancestor had sacrificed too much for the human civilization. He knew that he wasn't Mudblade's opponent, but he still wanted to try. If he could save Lan Meng then he would. If he couldn't then he wouldn't regret it. After several teleportations, Lu Yin appeared not too far away from Mudblade. They stared at each other. "You really care about your own race?" Mudblade was excited and its voice rose. It had succeeded. This scoundrel was going to die here. Lu Yin stared at Mudblade. "I'll give you a choice. If you don't threaten me with humans I can stay and fight with you. If you try to save him then I'll leave right now. You won't be able to catch me." "What right do you have to negotiate? What right do you have to threaten me? Ask him if he wants me to save him or if he wants me to leave." Mudblade slowly moved up, revealing the Mountain Sword Sect's ancestor's mouth. "Tell him to save you." The Mountain Sword Sect's ancestor coughed a few times, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. "Tell me." Mudblade shouted. The Mountain Sword Sect's ancestor laughed, but Mudblade was confused. Why was he laughing at a time like this? Luin also laughed, but he clenched his fists. "Nice, you even have a human inheritance. Judging from your voice you're not that old." Chapter 43-45. Lu Yin bowed to the Mountain Sword Sect elder, Junior Lu Yin, a descendant of the remnants of human civilization during the Nine Walls era. "Oh, we're the same. We're also descendants of that group of Bates, but compared to you we're much worse. Sorry for the trouble." "Senior, please don't say that. You can go. I'm very happy that the human civilization still has a legacy. A civilization is not alone and I'm willing to die. Thank you for being willing to come back." "Young man." Mudblade shouted, "Shut up." His body covered the Mountain Sword Sect elder's head. Lu Yin released his hand and Golian appeared pointing at Mudblade. "Did you hear that? I can stay or I can go. Make a choice." Mudblade hesitated. "Okay, let's see what you can do to save him." Then he threw the Mountain Sword Sect elder into the Muddy Kingdom. "He's there. Go save him." Lu Yin suddenly teleported and reappeared in the Muddy Kingdom. The ancestor of the Mountain Sword Sect was right in front of him, but there was a long white blade beside him. It was one of Mudblade's twin swords. It was a civilization treasure that contained the Eternal Realm. The moment Lu Yin teleported, the white sword slashed horizontally. Lu Yin instinctively dodged the unparalleled sharpness. It was a choice he had to make when his life was in danger. He didn't even want to touch this kind of sharpness. The void was cut and Mudblade appeared. Another white sword slashed down in a cross. The sky was divided into 4 and Lu Yin quickly teleported away. The slash spread infinitely, and Lu Yin teleported again and again to avoid it. He stared at the slash that was close to him, and the triple firmament sword will slashed out in reverse to collide with the slash. The triple firmament sword will didn't even have the slightest resistance and was directly cut off. Even though there was a saying that things would move in the opposite direction when they reached an extreme, Lu Yin still didn't want to take the slash head-on. It wasn't as simple as its sharpness. This slash contained the laws of the universe. If he took it head-on, he might not be able to withstand it. Mudblade's opponent was Red Hero. Against Red Hero, Teal Lotus Emperor, Boss, and his own teleportation weren't confident of victory. In the distance, slashes covered the sky, slashing towards the Muddy Kingdom in all directions. Is this how you save him? You can't even get close. Human civilization, don't make me look down on you. Lu Yin frowned. It sounded like Mudblade didn't know anything about human civilization, which meant that the Mudwater Nation hadn't fought against the Ninth Base civilization. The Nine Walls civilization was a long time ago, and there were very few civilizations that participated in it. It was impossible to meet them everywhere. If there were 10 fishing civilizations in the square inch, perhaps only 2 of them would besiege the Ninth Base civilization. The rest might not even know about the existence of the human civilization, which was normal. This probability was considered high by Lu Yin. The surface of his body continued to dry up. When things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. With the rogue in hand, he took a step forward and teleported directly into the country of mud and water. However, this time he did not appear next to the patriarch of the Mountain Sword sect, but behind the Mud Blade. Actually, he didn't know which was in front and which was behind. God Investiture Catalog, Triple Firmament Sword Intent, Hidden Sword, Long River of Sword Dao. The white saber slashed down, and the sword will of the 3 firmament in the Sword Dao River could not withstand it and was directly cut apart. The entire Sword Dao River was cut apart. The Sword Dao River could not hurt the Mud Blade at all. Even the Ji River could cut apart the Sword Dao River, let alone the Mud Blade. What Lu Yin wanted was the Path Sword. He had joined the battlefield and fought against the country of mud and water, but he had not used the power of karma. He had kept it as a trump card, especially the Path Sword. He did not want the country of mud and water to know about it, but he had no other choice. The Path Sword was hidden within the Sword Dao River, and when the river was cut apart, the Path Sword swept past the white saber and slashed at the Mud Blade. The sword slashed out, but Mud Blade had never expected Lu Yin to have such a move up his sleeve. Lu Yin stared at Mud Blade's karma and slashed out. In an instant, the karma heavenly Dao suddenly condensed, and the Dao sword danced as it slashed down. Karma. The Mud Blade was shocked and quickly retreated. However, its karma was unable to retreat under the Path Sword. As the Path Sword slashed down, one of the Mud Blade's white sabers suddenly blurred. What Lu Yin had slashed was the karma of one of the Mud Blade's white sabers. That white saber contained the karma of a certain civilization and an eternal realm cultivator. Everything had to be severed, including the past, opportunities, memories and experiences of that period. At the same time, Lu Yin reached out to grab the Mountain Sword sect's ancestor. He did not know which of the 2 white sabers would be severed, but his luck was good. It just so happened to be the saber beside the Mountain Sword sect's ancestor. Just as he was about to grab the Mountain Sword sect's ancestor, a crack suddenly spread out from his fingertip. Along with it, the entire void and the entire universe spread out endlessly. This was a world that could not be seen. Lu Yin's palm was cut apart, but his withered flesh continued to heal as blood covered his palm. He caught it and teleported away. His body disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already 20 years away from the Mud Blade. Lu Yin was ecstatic, but when he looked to the side, he saw that he had only caught an arm. It was the Mountain Sword sect's ancestor's other arm, and the Mountain Sword sect's ancestor was still in his original position. Lu Yin's face went pale as he looked at the country of mud and water. At that moment, the Mud Blade had recovered. The Path Sword slash was not enough to completely destroy a civilization's treasure. The Mud Blade itself was much stronger than Lu Yin, and that treasure also contained an eternal life. Unless Lu Yin sacrificed the entire path of karma, he would not be able to destroy it. When he had used the Path Sword to destroy the Immortal Master's experience, he had sacrificed an eternal life's karma. That was the Immortal Master's own experience, and it had nothing to do with civilization or eternal life. One could imagine how much karma was needed to destroy a white saber. Even so, the Path Sword had still greatly reduced the power of one of the white sabers. The Mud Blade appeared beside the Mountain Sword sect's ancestor, and the 2 white sabers revolved around him. He faced Lu Yin and a cold aura spread out. Just now, when Lu Yin had withstood the void cracks, those cracks had also severed the mountain sword sect's ancestor's arm, so he had been forced to teleport away with it. You said that he didn't need to threaten me. If it was a threat, it wouldn't have been an arm that was severed, the mud blade said. The mud blade spoke with a surprised tone. You've even comprehended the power of karma. I underestimated you and you almost succeeded. Lu Yin's eyes darkened. It doesn't feel good to be slashed by karma. If you don't want your civilization's treasure to be destroyed, let him go. Otherwise, even if you win this battle, you won't be able to compare to the other 8 elders when you return to the country of mud and water. The mud blade sneered. Let's see how much karma you have. Don't regret it. Lu Yin teleported and the void exploded. Endless cracks spread out as the slash approached from afar. Lu Yin kept teleporting, and the triple firmament sword will struck from all directions. He could not find a flaw, and every triple firmament sword will was severed by the white saber. This white saber could not be taken head-on. Lu Yin was afraid, but the mud blade was even more shocked. A scoundrel could actually fight with it for so long without being defeated. Although he relied on teleportation, it had injured this person with its invisible world, and this person had recovered. Logically speaking, although its invisible world was not as powerful as the slash of a civilization's treasure, it was still not something an ordinary eternal realm expert could withstand. This scoundrel had actually endured it. Whether it was movement, defense, or attack, this person could be regarded as invincible. If it was not for the fact that the mud blade was much stronger than him, it would not be a match for him at the same level. Thinking of this, the mud blade's murderous intent grew. This scoundrel was too great a threat to the country of mud and water. Among the 8 elders, no one could really ignore this threat except him and an Ibiluo. Once he broke through to the eternal realm, he might be able to fight an Ibiluo, and it would be even more impossible for the country of mud and water to defeat the unknown. He must kill him. Damn it, if it was not for teleportation, how could this person fight with him? Bang. There was a soft sound, and the triple firmament sword will landed on the back of the white saber. It could not be taken head-on, but it could cut through the back of the saber. The white saber flipped over and struck, and the triple firmament sword will was cut off. For the mud blade, cutting off the back of the saber did not mean much. It had 2 sabers and the blade could protect the entire country of mud and water. But for Lu Yin it was different. The scoundrel's first strike landed on the back of the saber, and there was a soft sound. When the white saber flipped over and slashed down, Lu Yin hurriedly pulled back the scoundrel. He could not take it head-on. Then he aimed at the back of the saber and slashed again. The mud blade thought that Lu Yin was struggling and wanted to break the white saber by slashing the back of the saber. It was ridiculous. The white saber was a weapon of civilization, and it also contained the power of the eternal realm. But then it felt that something was wrong. The greatest power of the Golian was the ability to enter the body. As the vitality continued to flow into the mud blade's body, the mud blade was surprised. The eternal realm is in line with the laws of the universe? Your weapon came from a dead eternal realm. Yes. Lu Yin slashed the back of the saber again. He focused on the white saber that had been blurred by the path sword. It did not matter if he could cut it or not. He would cut it first. Even the eternal realm could not withstand the surging vitality for a long time. It needed to resist. The mud blade also had to guard against Lu Yin's teleportation. No matter how small the threat was to it, it had to at least endure it. On this battlefield, any distraction was fatal. The mud blade had to reduce the number of attacks on Lu Yin to guard against the Golian slashing the back of the saber. But even so, it only slowed down the absorption of the vitality. As time passed, the vitality would continue to fill the mud blade's body until it could no longer ignore it. In this way, Lu Yin did not expect to defeat the mud blade. Even if all the vitality entered the mud blade's body, it was impossible to defeat it. All he wanted was a chance to save the mountain sword sect's ancestor. It was just a chance. In the universe's starry sky, cracks were everywhere. An invisible world, the heaven splitter. Lu Yin hurriedly teleported away. The moment the heaven splitter appeared, all the cracks converged toward the mud blade like water. Finally, they were attached to the 2 white sabers and slashed at Lu Yin from afar. Lu Yin dodged the slash and stared at the 2 white sabers. He could not slash the back of the saber or else the Golian would be finished. This was the fusion of the world that the mud blade could not see with its own civilization's inheritance. Slashes came from afar and Lu Yin kept dodging them. His mind was racing as he tried to think of a way to save the mountain sword sect's ancestor. Chapter 43-46. Mudblade definitely hadn't used his full strength yet. Facing his teleportation, it was waiting for an instant to kill him, just like how Luin was waiting for an instant to save someone. No one could fail. Luin observed for a while. Suddenly, he teleported to the side of Mudblade and faced the slash of the white longsword while dodging. Karma again. Mudblade was vigilant and slashed down with its longsword, but this sword contained very little karma. It was just Lu Yin's test. Next he waved his hand slowly. Under the karma heavenly way, a large number of Dao swords appeared and turned into a river of Dao swords that slashed towards Mudblade. On the other side, the triple firmament sword will also turned into a river of Dao swords. Mudblade hurriedly slashed to both sides with its two white long swords. Compared to the Dao swords, the triple firmament sword Will's river of Dao swords was far less threatening, but it didn't know where the real Dao swords were hidden. There were only one or two Dao swords that could threaten Mudblade. It didn't believe that Luin had that much karma. But even if there were only one or two, it had to find it first. Once it was slashed again, one of the white longswords would be weakened. Its position in Mud Country would be unstable. Strength reigned supreme everywhere. The two rivers of Dao swords suddenly separated and slashed towards Mudblade from all directions. At the same time, Luin held Go Lien tightly and white vitality surged out, directly turning into a visible vitality that went towards Mudblade. Mudblade faced the impact of the three forces and slashed wildly with its two white longswords. Whether it was the river of Dao swords or the vitality, they were all cut into pieces. No force could get close. Now Luin suddenly opened his celestial eye and the purple eye power enveloped the mountain sword sect elder. Bang! With a loud bang, the white longsword slashed on the outer eye incarnation but couldn't cut it. Mudblade was shocked. Impossible. What blocked the white longswords was the 13 pieces of armor from Mahakala's 100 seals. This was something that even Elder Shan couldn't destroy easily. It was the ultimate strength of the Black Apocalypse civilization. Even Ni Biluo couldn't destroy it easily, let alone Mudblade. No matter how strong Mudblade's blade was, it couldn't surpass Elder Shan's. Luin grabbed the Mountain Sword Sect's Patriarch and was about to teleport away, but the Mountain Sword Sect's Patriarch dodged. His bloodied eyes stared at Luin, and he used all of his strength to evade. Go, he said hoarsely. In front of Lu Yin's eyes, the Mountain Sword Sect's ancestors' eyes, ears, mouth, and nose suddenly poured out cement towards Luin. This scene was extremely familiar. Back then, Niwa had used the same trick to draw Lu Yin's portrait on paper. This was a move that the Muddy Country had collected from civilized creatures. It was a true legacy move. Luin teleported away. If he had touched the Mountain Sword Sect's ancestor, then the cement would have touched him and he might have been drawn out. He tried his best to fight for this opportunity. This opportunity was actually what Mudblade wanted to give him, and it was also an opportunity for Mudblade himself. However, Mudblade didn't think that Luin would be able to use his own ability to create an opportunity. The more Luin could do it, the more he would let his guard down. Mudblade thought that he could draw Luin, but he didn't expect the Mountain Sword Sect's ancestor to ruin it. Mudblade was furious. The cement tore through the Mountain Sword Sect's ancestor's skin and flesh. You're courting death. The Mountain Sword Sect's ancestor laughed bitterly. Enough. Luin, you're not immortal yet. To be able to do this, there's hope for the prosperity of human civilization. Go, don't worry about me. Go. Luin stared at Mudblade. Let him go and I'll fight you. I won't run. Mudblade sneered. You won't run? I won't rest until I die. Luin was firm. Mudblade mocked. Human civilization? You're more fragile than I thought. Emotions are the most useless thing. They're the barrier that prevents you from reaching the peak of the realm. You've reached this level, yet you're still hindered by emotions. How stupid. Unfortunately, I don't believe you. Whoosh. With a soft sound, the Mountain Sword Sect's ancestor, who had been collected into the painting, pointed at Luin. I suddenly realized that since you care about him so much, then use him as your opponent. If you have the ability, then take him away. This isn't a threat. Lu Yin's eyes were as deep as the sea. He stared at Mudblade, his hand holding Go Lien trembling. What, are you afraid? You can leave if you want. Mudblade sneered and slashed down, tearing apart the sky and covering the world. Luin watched the attack approach and teleported away. When he reappeared, he was right in front of Mudblade. He clenched his left hand into a fist and punched out. In front of him, the Mountain Sword Sect's ancestor's white sword was suddenly blocked. Lu Yin's fist was hurriedly deflected, but behind him, two white swords slashed down. With a bang, Lu Yin's body fell rapidly. He spat out a mouthful of blood. If he hadn't used the Mahakala sealing mirror to block it at the critical moment, his body would have been torn apart. Mudblade controlled the three white swords to slash at Lu Yin. At this point, it didn't believe that Lu Yin would save someone who was about to die. Since that was the case, it would kill him by force. Even if he wanted to run, the battle wasn't over yet. Lu Yin kept dodging the white swords, and every time he counterattacked, he would face the mountain sword sect's ancestors' folded swords. His attacks would break and shatter the swords, and then the mountain sword sect's ancestor would die. He couldn't counterattack and he couldn't escape even if he wanted to save someone. Lu Yin was in a desperate situation. He had teleportation, hidden raven fixation and various other powers, but he was helpless at this moment. The sky was like a piece of paper under the sharp blade, and his body wasn't much better off. Lu Yin kept dodging the attacks, his gaze fixed on the mountain sword sect's ancestor's white sword. He avoided the swords, but he couldn't avoid the invisible world. His body was cut into bloody wounds, and he could only teleport far away and then teleport again, constantly looking for an opportunity. As time passed, more and more wounds appeared on his body. Neither the Celestial Eye's external avatar nor the Path Sword could find an opportunity. Mudblade's control of the three white swords grew smoother, and it slashed at the void far away. Lu Yin struggled like a drowning man, and his sword Dao River appeared once more. Mudblade slashed at the mountain sword sect's ancestor's folded white sword, shattering the river. This river originated from karma, and most of it was minor karma. Even so, Lu Yin didn't want to clash with the mountain sword sect's ancestor's folded white sword. Mudblade's attacks grew wilder and wilder, and the invisible world descended once more. Lu Yin hurriedly dodged, but his body was still cut into several bloody wounds. When things reached an extreme, they could only be reversed. Mudblade couldn't figure out why Lu Yin hadn't fled yet. It obviously didn't want him to, but if it were Lu Yin, there was no point in continuing to fight. Karma might be able to erase the white sword, but it couldn't take it away. But even if Lu Yin hadn't fled, it would be difficult for Mudblade to kill him. Teleportation was too disgusting. If Mudblade had threatened the mountain sword sect's ancestor's life, Lu Yin would have left immediately because there was no point. But now Mudblade could slowly grind Lu Yin to death. This was especially true as it waited for Ni Biluo's arrival. It couldn't kill a powerhouse who could teleport, so it could only use Mudblade. Lu Yin teleported once more to appear in front of the Mudblade, and the three white blades slashed down. Lu Yin's gaze was fierce and resolute as he unleashed all of the energy he had absorbed when he reached an extreme. He punched out at the Mudblade, and to his side was his external eye avatar, which had 13 pieces of black armor. Mudblade was apprehensive. Lu Yin had a way to defend against its attacks, and it was precisely this avatar that had blocked it more than once. It couldn't figure out how such a rascal's power could block its attacks, but seeing Lu Yin constantly dodge, it guessed that even if this power could block its attacks, it wouldn't be able to do so too often. This rascal didn't really have a way to defend against its attacks. What it didn't know was that Lu Yin didn't want to use his avatar to block the attacks, but he was afraid that it would be discovered that the only thing that could block the attacks were the 13 pieces of armor. It wouldn't be seen through once or twice, but it would definitely be seen through if it happened too often. This was the only power he could use to block the attacks head-on and counterattack. Lu Yin wanted to use it as little as possible. Bang! Bang! There were 3 loud bangs as the white swords slashed down, but they were blocked by the 13 pieces of armor. Even so, Lu Yin was still shaken to the point of vomiting blood. He endured the injury and punched out. The Mudblade released an invisible world, and countless cracks converged to form a fourth attack that collided with Lu Yin's power. Lu Yin's power was forcefully torn apart. Strength and attacks were 2 different concepts, and the Mudblade couldn't block Lu Yin's power. However, that was only possible if the power could hit it. With his power torn apart, Mudblade slashed straight at Lu Yin. At the same time, the 3 white swords slashed down again. Unless Lu Yin teleported away, this rascal would be cut to pieces. Lu Yin's eyes widened. Now was the time to merge karma. The karma that had been scattered from the Sword Dao River faced the Mudblade and created karma. Karma creation was one of the methods he had comprehended. The first time he had comprehended it, it had helped him escape from the claws of the hexagonal Eternal Realm monster. Now he was using it again in the face of the powerful Mudblade. Creating karma wasn't a killing power, but to Lu Yin right now it was a killing power. Lu Yin turned around and reached out to grab the Elder's folded white blade. His arm was covered with 13 pieces of black armor, but the rest of his body was not covered by the armor. Just as the other 2 white blades were about to land on him, the 4th slash from the mud blade swept past Lu Yin and collided with the 2 white blades. There was a loud boom and the void was completely cut apart. It was as fragile as tofu and the void was cut into several pieces. Lu Yin's arm took the blow from the mountain sword sect's elder's folded white sword. The black armor shook and the blood vessels tore his arm apart. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fist. He caught the white sword that the mountain sword sect's elder had transformed into. He teleported away. The mud blade stared blankly at the white sword that had been snatched away. What happened? Its 4th attack with the invisible world was clearly aimed at Lu Yin. Why did it deviate? Why did it slash at the other 2 swords? Lu Yin looked up and saw the elder panting heavily. The white sword in his hand had returned to the mountain sword sect's elder. Lu Yin supported the mountain sword sect's elder and smiled at the mud blade. He had done it. In fact, he had never planned to save the mountain sword sect's elder before he was folded into a civilization artifact. He was facing the Mud Kingdom, and the mountain sword sect's elder was controlled by the mud blade. It was obvious that the mud blade could draw him out at any time and then erase him. The mud doll had used this trick on him before. Even if he had saved the mountain sword sect's elder before, once the mud blade erased him, the mountain sword sect's elder would be dead. Thus, the only way to save the mountain sword sect's elder was to be captured by the mud blade, fold him into a civilization artifact and then take it away. Chapter 43-47. The ancestor of the mountain sword sect had already been folded into a civilization treasure, so it was impossible for the mud blade to draw him out again. Even if the ancestor of the mountain sword sect was saved and recovered, it would not be able to do it. Unless the ancestor of the mountain sword sect was caught and covered in cement again. No talent was invincible. The stronger the talent, the more restrictions there were. The inheritance of the Mud Kingdom also had its restrictions. Otherwise, anything that was touched by the cement would be drawn out. The Mud Kingdom would have been invincible long ago. If it couldn't beat it, it would run away and hide in a corner to draw the enemy's image. The Mud Kingdom did not have this ability. Therefore, from the beginning, the Mud Blade let Lu Yin save it. It was to prepare a trap for Lu Yin. A trap specially designed to deal with teleportation. It hoped that Lu Yin could save the ancestor of the mountain sword sect at that time, but it could not be saved too easily. If it was fake, Lu Yin would be vigilant. Lu Yin had to think of a way to save the ancestor of the mountain sword sect, forcing the ancestor of the mountain sword sect to be folded into a civilization treasure, waiting for the moment to be saved. Therefore, even if the ancestor of the mountain sword sect did not avoid Lu Yin would be wary of the mud blade's talent and would not be touched by the cement. In a battle of life and death, it was a battle of strength and brains. The mud blade was not stupid. It set up traps step by step. Although Lu Yin was young, his battle experience and knowledge of the Mud Kingdom gave him the possibility to deal with it. In the end, he saved the ancestor of the mountain sword sect. Looking at the mud blade, Lu Yin did not say anything. He directly teleported with the ancestor of the mountain sword sect. Let's get away from the mud blade first. The mud blade was angry. It did not know that Lu Yin had seen through it from the beginning. It only thought that Lu Yin had used karma to plot against it at the critical moment, using its own strength to stop its slash. It was not willing. It was not willing. Lu Yin teleported again and again. After 5 consecutive teleportations, he left the mud blade's attack range. Senior, how are you? Junior will send you to Mount Supreme to recuperate. There are also Eternal Life Realm experts there to help you heal. Just as he was about to do so, he was stopped by the ancestor of the Mountain Sword Sect. The ancestor of the Mountain Sword Sect had lost his arms and could only rely on Lu Yin. He said in a hoarse voice, "Run. Don't worry about me. You can't run with me." Senior, we've already escaped. No. The ancestor of the Mountain Sword Sect looked at Lu Yin vaguely and said urgently, "I have its power in my body. Run. Oh. Before he could finish speaking, the heavens were overturned, and a suffocating pressure suddenly descended. Lu Yin looked past the Mountain Sword Sect's ancestor and into the distance. At some point in time, a huge kingdom of muddy water had appeared, the largest one he had ever seen. Far surpassed the mud blades. If Clay Blade's muddy water country was a city, then this muddy water country was a star. As far as his eyes could see, there seemed to be a pair of eyes within the mud water kingdom that met his gaze. With a bang, the mirror light technique shattered, and Lu Yin retreated several steps in shock. Not good, it's the Nibby lock. A single glance was enough to shatter the mirror light technique. He grabbed the mountain sword sex ancestor and teleported away. Even though the mirror light technique had been shattered, his celestial eye could still see a distance that was equivalent to 20 years of traveling at the speed of an eternal realm cultivator. Luin blade swords Lulu Luin blade to lose, Lulu Lulu, Lulu Lulu was. Mountain. Lu at this moment he recalled what old ancestor Shan had said. Teleportation was not invincible. When faced with certain existences, one could not even escape. He couldn't escape. At this moment he knew that he couldn't escape. The paper was like a soul-sucking rope. It was getting closer. Lu Yin's face went pale. How much did the mountain sword sect pay to deal with someone who wasn't even in the eternal realm? Not only did the mud blade attack, but they also lured Lu over. They didn't care about the outcome of the battle. They only cared about themselves. Just as the paper was about to fall, a voice came from afar. Haha, you owe me a life, kid. Lu Yin looked over. Ah, old man. Whoosh. Within the universe, heaven and earth were split into two, and a long river appeared. Lu Yin's pupils shrank. Was that the river of time? 1, 2, 3. He didn't know how many rivers of time gushed out from different directions, like water dragons crashing down the paper bridge, scattering the papers in all directions. Lu Yin heaved a sigh of relief. He couldn't care less about what kind of creature the old man was. Teleportation was very fast, and a single instant was enough. This was considered fast for a normal person, but on this battlefield, every single instant was a luxury. After teleporting several times, a sense of horror followed him like a shadow. He turned around and saw a faintly discernible surging river. Could that be the river of time? Before he could see it clearly, two beams of light appeared. Mud blade? Lu Yin's expression changed. The mud blade slashed at the white sword, blocking Lu Yin's path. He had no choice but to teleport away. He could escape Lulu's range if he went straight, but changing directions was different. He would only move within Lulu's range. You can't escape. Die. The mud blade slashed at the white sword. Lu Yin gritted his teeth and kept teleporting. The mountain sword sex ancestor said, "Let me go, Lu Yin. You can't escape with me." Lu Yin kept teleporting. The mud blade was using Lulu's power to keep up with his teleportation, forcing him to constantly change his destination. Child, the human legacy needs you. I'm already old. Let me go and leave. Lu Yin dodged the attack and teleported away. Lu Yin, the big picture is more important, the ancestor shouted. Lu Yin gritted his teeth. Many people's lives are gambled. In this area, there's no creature that can remain unscathed. Every species, even fishing civilizations, have to gamble. They have to gamble that they can survive and that they can pass on their legacies. Senior, I've gambled many times. What's so important about the big picture? Either you lose or you don't dare to gamble. I'm betting my life on tomorrow. Mere cement can't kill me. The mountain sword sex ancestor looked at Lu Yin's resolute gaze and thought back to the first half of his life. He suddenly understood why the human civilization he had led had been defeated. He had been afraid of the destruction of his legacy and the extinction of humanity, so he had retreated time and time again. He had not dared to gamble, which was why he had lost. He had lost in his own universe and he had also lost in this area. He would rather sacrifice himself than let Lu Yin gamble, but Lu Yin had not only gambled with his own life, but also with his faith. The mountain sword sex ancestor wasn't wrong. If he lost once, his human civilization would be gone. It could only be said that the world had changed and his luck couldn't suppress destiny. He looked at Lu Yin's gaze. This child's luck could definitely suppress destiny. Lu Yin didn't know what the mountain sword sex ancestor was thinking. He only knew that he couldn't give up on this old man who had sacrificed everything for the human legacy. At this moment he didn't care about benefits or losses. The mud blade continued to attack. How long can you hide? You don't know. We've already won this war, but only one person is helping you. You've been abandoned. I'll give you a chance. Join my country of mud and I won't kill you. Lu Yin really wanted to send the mountain sword sex ancestor to Mount Supreme. It would be easier to escape that way, but he could only hope. He didn't have any chance, not even for a moment. Hearing the mud blade's words, Lu Yin looked back in confusion. Anyone who had the upper hand would try to persuade him to surrender. What kind of species was this? Join cement? What a joke. Did he really think he couldn't escape? Lu Yin stared at the mud blade. If it wasn't for Ni Biluo, he would have already used Crow to control the blade. However, it was useless. Even if he controlled the blade, he couldn't escape from Nibiluo's range. The difference was too great. He could only wait for the old man to finish his battle. Far away, beyond his line of sight, Lu Yin didn't know how the battle between Nibiluo and the old man was going. He didn't think that the old man would be able to fight Nibiluo head-on. The old man's strength was beyond his expectations. He thought it was on the same level as Demao. Demao couldn't fight Nibiluo at all. The unknown was too deep. Generally speaking, shouldn't experts like the old man be taciturn? He was the most talkative and the most disgusting. Time continued to pass. As long as the mud blade didn't stop chasing, it meant that Nibiluo's range hadn't disappeared. Not long after, the mud blade suddenly disappeared. Lu Yin looked back and saw that the mud blade was still there. It didn't chase after him. Was the battle between the old man and Nibiluo over? Suddenly, Lu Yin felt a chill run down his spine as a strange and terrifying killing intent descended from the heavens. He immediately teleported away, but a trident appeared in front of him and approached him with a cold glint. Lu Yin stared at the trident. Was this Nibiluo's weapon? The Nibiluo trident was an artifact of 3 civilizations and 3 eternal realms. Lu Yin had never thought that he would face this weapon head-on. The trident's tip locked onto him and he couldn't teleport away. Everything around him was pushed aside and space itself collapsed. At this moment, Lu Yin's mind went blank. There was nothing he could do to resist. His body was pushed aside, and the mountain sword sect's ancestor rushed forward to crash into the trident. Lu Yin's pupils shrank as he stared blankly at the trident piercing through the ancestor's body. Blood splattered across space as the void collapsed. The mountain sword sect's ancestor's body suddenly disintegrated, leaving nothing behind. All that was left for Lu Yin was his resolute back. Without saying anything, he vanished into thin air in an instant. The trident paused as the river swept over and knocked it aside. The old man's voice rang out, "I was careless, but you're lucky you didn't die." Lu Yin looked ahead and saw the river of time as well as the trident in the distance. He hadn't died, but the mountain sword sect's ancestor had. Had he won the gamble with his life, or had he lost the gamble with the ancestors? "I'll send you away. Remember, kid, you owe me a life." Lu Yin clenched his fists. Wait. He then teleported into the distance, right in front of Mud Blade. Mud Blade was stunned, not expecting Lu Yin to appear so suddenly. Lu Yin raised his arm, which was covered in armor, and grabbed a long white blade. His gaze was serene and terrifying. "Send me away." Time and space flowed and all Lu Yin saw was gray. He heard the sound of the river, and when he opened his eyes again, there was only Mud Blade and an unfamiliar starry sky. He and Mud Blade had both been sent away. Lu Yin didn't know where they were sent, but he knew that he had to avenge the mountain sword sect's ancestor. At the very least, he had to kill Mud Blade. Chapter 43-48. Bang. There was a loud bang as Lu Yin attacked. Mud Blade was caught off guard and was knocked back by a punch. Mud Blade swung towards Lu Yin. "You're courting death." Lu Yin teleported away, using Heaven's Eye to suppress all life. The purple pressure suddenly appeared, but Mud Blade ignored it. The difference was too great. The Mud Blade was equivalent to an eternal life realm powerhouse who conformed to 2 laws. The 2 white long blades were extremely sharp. Without the black scales, Lu Yin wouldn't even dare to touch the edge. Mud Blade's defense was also extremely strong. Mud Blade dodged the Karma Sword and the Sword River was split in 2. Golian couldn't even touch the white blades that used Sky Splitter. Lu Yin attacked again and again, but they all shattered under the edge. Mud Blade couldn't wait for Lu Yin to fight it to the death. No matter how strong this rascal was, could he surpass it? That was impossible. Lu Yin stared at Mud Blade with Heaven's Eye as his body constantly withered and recovered. He continued to absorb energy until it was completely absorbed. He teleported and appeared in front of Mud Blade. Crow Immobilization. Crow Immobilization required eye contact. Mud Blade's eyes couldn't be seen. However, it was definitely staring at Lu Yin. Unless he was prepared for Crow Immobilization in advance. Mud Blade suddenly froze. It couldn't move. With Lu Yin's eye as the starting point and Mud Blade as the ending point, it was covered with strange black lines that froze space. How was this possible? What kind of power was this? It could actually control itself? Lu Yin leaped in front of Mud Blade, clenched his fist and released all of his strength. Boom. There was a loud bang as Mud Blade's body was bent, and the cement surface was torn apart. A surging power burst out from behind Mud Blade, shattering the void and distorting the starry sky visible to the naked eye. Finally, it turned into a terrifying force that twisted in all directions until it reached a great distance. Luin looked up and stared at Mudblade. Mudblade's body hadn't been penetrated, so this punch couldn't kill it. Instead, it had pushed Mudblade out of Crow Immobilization's range. Although Mudblade wasn't heavily injured, it was still shocked. This was the first time Luin had heard it, and that Crow Immobilization was especially frightening. What kind of power was this? The white blade slashed down. Luin dodged. It wasn't heavily injured? Alright, if the first time didn't work, then the second time. The second time didn't work, then the third time. He didn't believe that he couldn't break the mud blade. Beneath the starry sky, Luin and Clay Blade crossed paths. He was absorbing the power of the extreme, and the Clay Blade was wary of Zhuiya's immobilization. It constantly slashed at Luin, but some of its attacks were blocked by the external eye avatars, and it was unable to break through the avatars. Luin also unleashed his second attack, Crow Immobilize. He controlled the mud blade and punched out with all his strength, causing even more cracks to appear on the mud blade's body. However, it would take a long time for the mud blade to completely penetrate through. The door suddenly appeared and 8-Colored's voice sounded, "Luin, the war is about to end." Lu Yin's eyes turned red. "Wait until I kill Mud Blade." "The war is about to end. There's no need for that. Wait for me to kill Mud Blade." Mud Blade sneered, "Kill me? Dream on, do you really think that I will be killed by your power? You don't understand the difference between us. It's a pity that the war has ended. Otherwise I would want to kill you too." Lu Yin stared fixedly at the mud blade as he continued to absorb the power of the backlash effect. There was no time left, and he did not know what would happen once the war ended. If he was right, the end of the war would come from Ni Beiluo. Mud blade was taken away by him, and Ni Beiluo had to deal with the old man. It had no time to care about the other unknowns, and it was afraid that Mud Blade would be killed. The unknowns themselves did not want to fight to the death with Mudwater Kingdom. After all, Mudwater Kingdom's characteristics meant that once entangled, it would be troublesome. Ni Beiluo could at least kill one of the unknowns. However, he had to kill Mud Blade to appease the spirit of the Mountain Sword Sect's ancestor in heaven. Thinking of this, he released the starry sky in his heart. The 3 divine stars rotated, and 3 lines of red, silver, and blue appeared, intertwining with each other. A terrifying divine power that Lu Yin had never experienced before erupted and rushed into his body. The surging divine power instantly drowned Lu Yin's mind. Previously, Lu Yin could not control the red and silver lines, but now there were 3. When the divine power surged into his body, Lu Yin roared to the sky. His eyes were filled with dazzling light, and his pupils could not be seen. In his mouth, a rainbow of divine power pierced through the starry sky and rushed straight up, turning into a tricolored divine power that sprinkled down. Lu Yin himself was immersed in a tricolored cloud, which was the materialization of his divine power. It was boiling and surging like a cocoon, gestating. Mudblade was stunned and stared at Lu Yin. What did this rascal do? The release of divine power just now had made him feel a chill. Looking at Lu Yin in the cloud of divine power, he actually felt a sense of dread. No, although he did not know what this rascal had done, he could not let him succeed. Thinking of this, Mud Blade slashed forward, cutting through the cloud of divine power. The blade pressed down on the divine power and cut into Lu Yin's body, but it could not cut through. Mud Blade was aghast. Impossible. A mere rascal had actually withstood the slash of his civilization's weapon, which was compatible with the laws of the universe. Impossible. Lu Yin had clearly not dared to touch the blade before. How could this be? The white longsword slashed down once more, continuously brandishing as it tore at Lu Yin's body. However, it was unable to completely sever his body. Every slash left a deep gash on Lu Yin's body, and fresh blood flowed from the wounds and quickly dyed his entire body red. Lu Yin was still shrouded in the Godforce clouds. His Godforce changed from red to silver to blue, and from blue to red. It kept changing colors until finally, all 3 colors appeared. Lu Yin opened his scarlet eyes and let out a loud roar. His Godforce exploded and repelled the Mud Blade. Mud Blade stared at Lu Yin vigilantly. Beside him, the 2 white blades faced each other from a distance. For the first time he felt pressure from Lu Yin. At this moment, Lu Yin, who appeared in front of Mud Blade, had completely changed. His eyes were scarlet and a black line drooped down from his left eye. His hair was red, silver, and blue, and his sea of chi was churning like a fog. A 3-colored world appeared behind him, as if he had walked out of another world. His sleeves were shattered and three-colored ferocious stripes appeared on his arms. A three-colored cloud appeared on his chest. His whole person seemed to have walked out of a sea of blood. With himself as the center, three-colored light spread out in all directions. The ripples caused the void to fluctuate, forming a vertical three-colored lake. At this moment, Luin made Mudblade feel like he was facing a monster. Although Luin was not in the eternal realm, he was like a collection of divine power. Mudblade waved its white blade and slashed at Luin. No matter what he was, he would shatter it all. Without the cocoon just now, he would like to see how Luin could block it. The white longsword slashed straight at Luin, and under Clayblade's surprised gaze, it slashed at Lu Yin's shoulders. Clayblade didn't try to block it, and the result was the same as before. Luin raised his hand and struck at Clayblade from afar. Tricolored divine power wrapped around his fingers and blasted out in the form of a light beam. Mudblade hurriedly dodged, and the three-colored divine power swept past him, blasting the void into boundless darkness. Then Luin waved his hand and the three-colored divine power beam moved horizontally, cutting the entire void. Mudblade could not dodge in time and was bombarded by the tricolored godly power. Its body was dented just like when Luin had used extreme matter must reflect to release all of its power. It felt like it was being torn apart, and it hurriedly controlled its blade to slash at Lu Yin's neck. At this moment, Lu Yin's consciousness was filled with killing intent and was almost drowned. He didn't have any combat habits and didn't even predict or avoid danger. His neck was slashed by the long blade, but the head that Mudblade expected did not appear. Luin stared at Mudblade and shot out another beam of divine power. The beam bombarded the void, and Mudblade couldn't completely avoid it no matter how hard it tried. It was very familiar with this scene. When the enemy dodged its blade, it couldn't take it head-on and could only dodge. However, it didn't teleport and was hit again in the blink of an eye. Then it was bombarded by the three-colored divine power, and its body was forced back step by step. At the same time, it controlled the long blade to slash at Luin, but Luin didn't retreat and rushed towards it. His body was constantly cut by the long blade and blood spilled in the starry sky. Mudblade didn't have it any better as the divine power finally penetrated its body. Luin couldn't penetrate it with his strongest strength, but now, it was torn apart by the divine power. Mudblade couldn't withstand it and hurriedly withdrew its long blade to resist Lu Yin's divine power bombardment. The beam of divine power bombarded the white longsword and pressed it down. He teleported and appeared in front of Mudblade. He kicked out and used his divine power to suppress the longsword. He could not move his hands, but he still had his feet. Mudblade was kicked away, but it wasn't enough. It was far from enough. Lu Yin's consciousness was completely blurred, but he knew that he had to kill this enemy. This enemy was his only goal. He kicked out again and stomped down hard on Mudblade's body, madly pressing it down. Mudblade roared and covered Luin with cement. Luin didn't have any thoughts of dodging and let the cement cover him. He kicked out fiercely and scattered the cement. Mudblade was heavily injured again, but it also took the opportunity to cover Luin and withdraw its long blade. Divine power came in an instant, and in front of Mudblade's eyes, the long blade overlapped to block. With a bang, Mudblade's body was sent flying. Luin didn't give it any chance to rest. He raised his hand and continuously bombarded it with divine power. Mudblade used its two blades to block while taking out a piece of white paper to draw Luin and then erased it. It looked again. Why wasn't it affected? Mudblade couldn't believe it. It clearly drew Luin, so how could it not be affected by erasing it? It wasn't that it didn't affect Luin, but rather the divine power. At this moment, it couldn't tell whether it was fighting against Luin or his godly power. The godly power covered Luin and nurtured the current Luin. Luin controlled the godly power, and the Mudblade felt quite good. It was facing a monster formed from an unknown tricolored godly power. Bang! The white paper was pierced and Mudblade was stunned. It looked at Luin as the divine power descended and the long blade slashed down. It barely managed to cut through half of the beam, but the remaining half still sent it flying. Luin growled and teleported close to Mudblade. He punched out, but it was blocked by the long blade. In front of him, another long blade slashed down and tore through Mudblade's body. Lu Yin's other fist also hit Mudblade and tore its body apart. This was a chaotic battle, exchanging injury for injury. Luin didn't feel any pain at all. His body was constantly recovering and withering. This was his instinct. However, Mudblade didn't want to fight like this. Lu Yin's killing was only instinct, but Mudblade was different. When the blade couldn't threaten Lu Yin's life, Mudblade's advantage over Lu Yin was completely gone. At this moment, Mudblade wanted to leave. This battle wasn't what it wanted. At this moment, Lu Yin wasn't the opponent it wanted. Chapter 43-49. However, it was impossible for it to escape. It allowed the sword to slash at its body as Lu Yin firmly suppressed it and continuously tore its body apart. Inch by inch, inch by inch, inch by inch. Since the beginning of this war, Mudblade had never suffered such injuries when facing Red Hero. At this moment, it really experienced the feeling of approaching death. It didn't want to die here. Sky Splitter. The invisible world shattered the void. Countless cracks converged and approached Mudblade. Lu Yin clenched his fists. He roared at the sky. Divine power was released and turned into a circle that continued to spread. The tricolored divine power was extremely overbearing and repelled Sky Splitter for a while. Lu Yin was too close to Mudblade. Mudblade wanted to absorb all the cracks in the void to complete the strongest slash. This slash was used by Lu Yin to slash its own two white long swords. It was not weak in a 1 versus 2 situation. It had also cut off Lu Yin's strongest power before. However, at this moment, it couldn't even gather and was repelled by the tricolored divine power. Mudblade was shocked. It merged the only cracks that had gathered and slashed with the dual swords. The dual sword slashed into Lu Yin's chest. It penetrated the bone. Lu Yin suddenly grabbed the dual swords with both hands. Divine power boiled. He suddenly exerted force on the surface of his body. When things reach an extreme, all the absorbed power was released. Crack. There was a shattering sound and cracks spread from the white long swords. Finally, it shattered under the shock of Mudblade. Mudblade couldn't believe that its own civilization treasure, which contained civilization and the eternal realm, was crushed. Grabbing the fragments of the dual swords, Lu Yin rushed to Mudblade. The fragments streaked across and tore Mudblade's body. His arms were like sharp blades, constantly waving and cutting Mudblade's body. Mudblade could only retreat, but its speed was far less than Lu Yin's. It couldn't avoid Lu Yin's teleportation. You forced me to do this. Mudblade roared, and its cement-like body suddenly twisted into the shape of a sword. Heartless Blade Realm. Mudblade turned itself into a long sword, collecting itself as a civilization treasure, and slashed at Lu Yin. Lu Yin raised his hand, and the white long sword fragments were directly turned into powder by the sharp edge. Mudblade slashed from top to bottom. Suddenly it stopped. It was Lu Yin's celestial eye, crow immobilization. Mudblade forgot that Lu Yin had this move. It had to pay a huge price to use the Heartless Blade Realm. Absorbing itself was equivalent to abandoning the laws of the universe. This move could make the slash reach its strongest state, but it would also make it extremely weak after the battle. It had never thought that it would have to use this move on a creature that was not even in the Eternal Life realm. Especially when this move was actually ineffective. At this moment, Lu Yin stretched out his arms and wrapped his fingers with divine power. 3-colored divine power poured into his hands, making him look like he was holding 2 suns. He slammed his palms together at Clayblade's body. Boom! There was a loud boom as the void expanded with Lu Yin and the Mudblade at the center. Eventually, the void shattered and the shockwaves spread out into the distance. In the same spot, Lu Yin's hands shattered the Mudblade's body as they crossed paths. The Mudblade was directly slapped into 3 sections. Mudblade never dreamed that he would lose here and in such a miserable manner. At this moment, the starry sky blurred. Mudblade's perception was also blurred. The universe was pitch black. Lu Yin frantically released his God Force, which allowed him to regain some of his consciousness. He hurriedly released the Divine Seal Catalog, and Ming Yan covered him with her consciousness from within, helping him maintain his consciousness. When she saw his bloodshot eyes, Ming Yan's heart ached. This battle had been too difficult. Lu Yin spat out a mouthful of blood. Although he had the ability to recover from injuries, the injuries caused by Mudblade's double slash were far from easy to recover. Both sides of his neck were almost cut off. He endured the serious injuries and released the starry sky in his heart to separate the 3-colored divine power. Otherwise, once Ming Yan's consciousness couldn't hold on, he would lose his mind again. The result would be hard to predict. This was the first time he tried to fuse the 3-colored divine power. He didn't expect the effect to be so strong. It directly made up for the gap between him and Mudblade. Mudblade's slash couldn't break his body's defense. The divine power was very strong, extremely powerful. This was just the 3-colored divine power. What would happen if he fused all the colors of divine power? Luin didn't dare to think about it. He couldn't guarantee that even if he broke through to the eternal life realm, he could bear it. Now it was not easy to separate the three-colored divine power. However, at this moment, the paper bridge raised the starry sky and Mud Doll appeared. Luin frowned. What was the eight-colored divine power doing? He fought so hard, but the enemy was still allowed to appear. Fortunately, he was also prepared. He took out Mount Supreme, and Master Qingqiao and Heaven-Bearer Eternity appeared. Luin was glad that he brought them here. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to fight in this state. As soon as Master Qingqiao and Heaven-Bearer Eternity appeared, Mud Doll fled in fear. They didn't chase but looked around and gasped. What happened here? The aftermath of the battle between Mud Blade and Luin hadn't dissipated. They felt the sharpness of Mud Blade, which was something they didn't dare to touch. It was like an ordinary person facing a blade. They also felt the overbearing power of the three-colored divine power. It was as if the entire area was filled with it. They looked at Luin. I'll have to trouble the two of you to protect Mud Blade. It's a pool of cement. It has been severely injured. Don't let it escape. Luin reminded. Master Qingqiao looked at Mud Blade. Mud Blade was half dead. It couldn't escape even if it wanted to, okay? With Master Qingqiao and Heaven-Bearer Eternity guarding him, as long as he didn't encounter any of the top 8 elders of Mudwater Kingdom, Luin could deal with the backlash without worry. Time passed slowly, but the end of the war didn't appear. Perhaps Mudwater Kingdom was waiting for Mud Blade. If Mud Blade didn't return, the war wouldn't end. But they didn't know that Mud Blade couldn't return. As soon as Mud Doll appeared, it was scared away by Master Qingqiao and Heaven-Bearer Eternity. No one knew if it had seen Mud Blade's miserable state. Heaven-Bearer Eternity glanced at Luin from time to time. This monster. He had just tried to use the spatial quagmire to touch the remaining cracks in the void, but the quagmire was torn apart as soon as it touched it. This was the remnant power that could disappear at any time. One could imagine how dangerous this battle would be. This Luin wasn't even an Eternal Realm cultivator. This monster was too terrifying. A few days later, Luin separated the 3 divine powers and let the 3 lines return to their respective planets. He opened his eyes and exhaled heavily. The overbearing feeling that Master Qingqiao and Heaven-Bearer Eternity felt disappeared. It was the overbearing power of divine power. Why hadn't 8 colors appeared yet? Was the war not over yet? Luin coughed, and Ming Yen appeared beside him to support him. She looked at him with heartache. Luin smiled weakly. I'm fine. Ming Yen nodded. Needless to say, she was now one with Luin. If Luin died, she wouldn't be able to live either. Thus, there was no need to advise Luin to be careful. It was fine as long as they were together. This was her only way out. Luin let Ming Yen return to the Divine Seal catalog and looked at himself. He was really pitiful. His body was covered in cuts and blood. Although he had experienced many life and death situations since he stepped onto the path of cultivation, it was rare for him to be in such a miserable state. He touched both sides of his neck and felt a lingering fear. He had almost been cut in half. This was the worst thing about the divine power transformation. His mind would be submerged and he wouldn't know how to defend or dodge. If Mudblade's attack had been a bit stronger, it wouldn't have mattered even if his head had been cut off. Just a bit more. With such heavy injuries, he would need to recover for a while. He looked at Mudblade and approached. Master Qingqiao and Heaven-Bearer Eternity looked on. Mudblade, I won't let you go. Mudblade's voice was low and hoarse. It was extremely weak. Luin nodded. I won't let it go either. I'll definitely make it pay for the mountain sword sect's ancestor. You. Mudblade mocked. Luin said, You seem to have the same attitude before the battle. He didn't wait for Mudblade's rebuttal and kicked it into the general appointment platform hell. The battle with Mudblade had consumed too much karma. It was just the right time to replenish it. As he watched the karma heavenly Tao surge, Luin sat down in exhaustion and looked at the grass grandmaster. Can you contact 8 colors? Master Qingqiao shook his head. I can't. Luin closed his eyes and healed while waiting for Mudblade's karma to increase. Time passed day by day, and the paper bridge disappeared. Far away in a huge country of mud, the 8 elders gathered. However, one was missing and it was Mudblade. What? Mudblade hasn't returned? Impossible. How is that possible? Are they crazy? How dare they kill Mudblade? Aren't they afraid of karma? An Ibiluo's voice sounded. Mudblade was defeated by that rogue. We don't know if it's dead or alive. An Biluo's voice sounded. The unknown injured Mudblade himself and then gave it to that rogue to kill. Despicable. That shouldn't be the case. Mudblade isn't stupid. We already know that there is such a powerful rogue existence. Whenever we fight with the unknown, karma will be determined first, so after the previous gathering, the unknown is already unwilling to fight with us, let alone seriously injure Mudblade. With Mudblade's strength, it's impossible to injure it without being karma designated by it. An Biluo said. From the beginning to the end, there was no other unknown to deal with Mudblade. The one who defeated Mudblade was that rogue. An Biluo and the other elders were shocked. That rogue defeated Mudblade alone? Yes. How is that possible? No one believed it. They knew Mudblade's strength too well. Not to mention Mudblade itself, that rogue wasn't even in the Eternal Realm. How could he defeat Mudblade? Mudblade had 2 Eternal Realm experts, which was equivalent to conforming to the laws of the universe. Of course, this equivalent referred to close, not equal. Even so, it was already very powerful. If an unknown wanted to fight Mudblade, it had to be an existence that conformed to the laws of the universe. Otherwise, Mudblade would be able to kill it at the same level. This was the rogue characteristic of their country of mud. The enemies they faced had always been 1 level higher than them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to escape their pursuit at all. Since when could creatures of a lower level kill them? Especially when they were more than 1 level lower. They were so low that there was no end to it. If that was the case, they couldn't imagine when there had been such a huge disparity between the 2 sides. An Biluo slowly said, "We have lost this war with the unknown. All members of the country of mud, listen up. From now on, don't approach this area. If you encounter that rogue, run away immediately. The civilization that rogue belongs to is called human." You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.